What?
I said we're live.
Hey!
What's up, everybody?
Here we are. We're here. We're all here.
Sorry, I'm muting Twitch. Welcome to Funny Nut Theorios.
Welcome.
We missed a week.
We did take a week off. We had some personal stuff going on. I know it got put on me, but
I needed the time too. Don't just blame him.
2/3 of us needed time. There we go.
Yeah. I was in Idaho. It was nice.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys
appreciate
us skipping the weeks that Clayton's out of town, so we don't have
the hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah. But this week is MK Ultra. We're continuing our focus in on alphabet agencies or whatever. This week is the CIA. Last week was supposed to be FBI because that's who killed, or 2 weeks ago, that's who killed MLK. But it really turned out to be all of them.
All the agencies working to get that guy killed.
Yeah.
And JFK, it's kind of just like a huge gamble of people.
Gambit.
We got into it on one episode that it kind of spawned the Churchill committees and all that stuff.
It's not the Churchill committee. It's the Church committee.
Church committee.
Churchill ran Britain.
Winston Churchill. But it was the guy's name was Church, right?
Yeah.
Church committees. Okay.
I think so.
My bad.
I must correct you. There probably is something else called the Churchill committees over like how long a sausage has to be before it's a Vienna sausage or something, you know?
No. I don't know what you mean by that.
All right, let's get into current events and then we'll get into MK Ultra. How about
that? Current events, go watch The Last of Us if you haven't. It's on HBO. It's a great show. Very it kind of reminds me of COVID in a way, but other than that, there's a few other ones we can talk about, like Bill Gates being friends with Epstein.
Yeah, he said he went to dinner with him.
One time?
More than that. And Melinda told him more than once to not associate with him.
You mean the woman that divorced him?
Yeah, I saw a video of her.
Correct.
I think it was on like 60 Minutes or 48. Not 48 hours. I think it was on 60 Minutes. After they got divorced, she was like, yeah, him being friends with Epstein was part of it, but you'll have to talk to him about any of that. Like, she was like, I'm not going to tell you anything, but yeah, I knew the guy. It was weird.
I don't know why y'all look so bad.
I know that he is very corrupt.
For sure. What was going on with Biden? They found more files or something. I don't remember what's happened in the last 2 weeks.
They found some files.
I think they found another laptop that they both used, Hunter and Biden.
Yeah.
Why isn't my camera going? Oh, there it goes. I don't know. It's hard to keep up with that one.
I didn't see anything on it.
The tide is still turning on Biden, which is weird to watch.
We were talking about it last episode, how like whoever the powers that be that kind of dictate who's president maybe are not favoring Biden anymore and pushing somebody else to, or they're trying to set up for Kamala Harris to take over, right?
Yeah. Or just I can't tell the length of time that they're willing to go, because they're either trying to get him to not run in 2024 and playing like a long con, or they're trying to get rid of him. And it's hard to...
They're probably trying to find out the chances of either way. So if they think they have a better chance of winning with Biden, and then ultimately, like if he wins 2024, maybe 2025, they start pulling him out and saying he's incompetent, like he gets impeached for some stupid reason, and then they put in Kamala Harris, and she gets like 4 or 3 free years, and then gets to run for another 8 years or some shit like that.
Yeah. No, there's all different kind of weird political ploys it could be. Because like, I remember right after Biden won the election, but before he was inaugurated, Pelosi did like made some stipulation that pertained to the 25th Amendment, which is the vote to remove the president. And everyone was like, oh, that must be for Trump. But it was really for like Biden. It made it easier to get the president out of office through you can just remove him with that amendment.
Yeah.
I think if Congress deems him incompetent, they can vote to remove him or something like that.
They should definitely deem him incompetent. The Pelosi body cam footage came out too. Did y'all see that?
I did
see that.
It's still weird. It's more weird than it was.
Very weird. It's like he looked drunk because he has a drink in his hand and he's chilling. He has like the white shirt on and no pants. Nope. He's in his boxers. Yeah, and then homie just out of nowhere just starts swinging that hammer and starts assaulting
the cops. The cops jump on him. Yeah.
If it was late at night and he's in his PJs, that's easily excusable. And
I'm not going to blame him, man.
Underwear.
If the guy,
no, I'm not going to blame him, man, for walking around his house at night with a wine and no pants on.
With another man that is assaulting you.
Yeah, but
he was there for like 30 minutes there. I mean, I don't know the full story. I wasn't there. But from what I've seen, he was there 30 minutes before that, the cops got there.
Right. Well, it's just hard to nail the timeline of like when the guy got there. If Paul was like being held hostage or they were meeting congenially at first. It's just so weird. The video made it weird.
You and take your pants off.
Yeah.
And make yourself a drink. Make yourself a drink. This is going to take a while. You already called the cops?
Well, the cops showed up because the intruder triggered the alarm, right?
Something like that.
No, someone called the cops.
I think, because
he called them.
From what I heard, you can hear like anything in that neighborhood. Like every house, it's all real connected. And
they released the audio of Paul Pelosi calling the police.
Oh, word! I haven't seen that.
That was like months ago. It was about as useful information wise as like the video we just got. So, I mean, I don't know.
Half of it is what's going on. Ass crack. Yeah. Fucking stupid.
Oh damn! And at the end of that video, though, you could hear Paul or Mr.
snoring.
Yeah, because he got rocked with that hammer. It was it was like I'm so concussed, I'm snoring.
They were
especially he was drinking too, so like he just went bye bye.
Dude, drinking already thins your blood, so if it was a head injury, that's even more scary.
Yeah,
very scary.
Oh, and then Project Veritas. Did y'all see that video? They do y'all know what Project Veritas is?
I've never heard that word before we started the show, maybe 10 minutes ago.
I have never looked into it, but I've heard of it.
They do like sting operations, journalistic operations, where they like hidden camera hire a girl to go on a date with a guy
to catch predator.
Almost, but they're not. I don't know if they're predators or not, but they're catching like heads of companies and big tech companies and stuff on dates, bragging about their job and like like it's some of them are so like nonchalant as like a Facebook employee going, I only work 30% of the time. Hey, it's on Drake.
I'm sorry.
Come on, DJ.
Golly.
But this last one, it was like the fourth in line at Pfizer bragging about how they're mutating. I'm going to walk a real thin line here because I know you can't play it on. Yeah, I posted an article about it.
Just staring at Drake's beautiful face. You are welcome, chat. Especially
This
you,
is-
waifu.
This is their response to the video, but the video is their fourth in line saying that they're starting to try to evolve COVID so they can preemptively put out a vaccine. And there's the way he's bragging about it makes it sound like way worse than that. Like he admits that he thinks it came out of Wuhan, and they're trying to prevent it by doing what they were doing in Wuhan, essentially. But that first paragraph says, like, we're not doing that. And then the next line is, but we are, though.
Do you have a specific line you're looking at?
Dude, Pfizer is a very...
It says no, that paragraph that you just cut off.
No, yeah. If they want to set the record straight, Pfizer has not conducted gain of function research.
And then the ongoing development is working with collaborators. We conducted research where original SARS virus has been used to express this spike protein and new variants of concern. So what they're doing is creating new variants. They are progressing, which is, I guess, gain of function is technically where you take a virus that doesn't attack people and give it that ability. So it's not technically gain of virus, but they are mutating the virus to try and make the vaccine before it comes out, which seems crazy for a private company to be doing. Also, they're global, so they don't necessarily have to abide by the rules of the United States in their research and development activities, which is going to tie into MK Ultra.
Definitely.
It's all crazy, dude.
I saw that did y'all watch that interview, that guy questioning the CEO of Pfizer at Davos, in Davos?
What was that?
Yeah, and he wouldn't answer or something.
He wouldn't answer. He was just like, have a good day. And he was like, oh, well, how many millions have you made off the vaccine that is not helping transmit, excuse me, that's not transmitting like you thought it would? And he keeps asking him all these fucking questions, and he just will not answer any of it. And now Bill Gates has just come out too. I retweeted on my Twitter saying the vaccine is not what they said it was, and they're trying to improve on what it is, but it's not where they want it. And basically everyone was lied to.
No, that story just keeps getting sketchier and sketchier. Well, we might have to it's really hard to do a COVID episode.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's also really hard to be unbiased about it because it affected everyone so much in so many different ways. So,
yeah.
But let's jump into MK Ultra.
Yep.
I read a book. Drake read a book.
Well,
Jeremy
reading.
Yeah. Jeremy read Books Worth of the Internet, I think, right?
I don't know. I had done some pretty extensive research, I guess, or personally.
Oh, yeah? How'd you do that?
That's misleading. I've never done LSD in my life. Yeah, never, ever. Have I ever? Not that I would.
Right, so why don't you tell us about what LSD is?
I can do that. So
Can you spell it for me?
LSD,
LSD is kind of
lysergic acid dithylamide. Did I get that right? Did I nail that right?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm gonna do what I always do and kind of give a history lesson. History with molasses, right? But I like to take things into perspective and kind of build the scenario that we're going to get into, which the true conspiracy is MK Ultra, which is CIA activities surrounding this miraculous drug, and kind of building up to the case why they would be interested, why they would use it for what we're going to get into using it, and then ultimately landing on the Manson murders, as I understand it. So anyways, looking up at the research of it, LSD obviously was first synthesized in 1938 by Albert Hofmann, correct? So he was employed by a company, I think, called Sandoz, which I thought might have been the same people that developed like the Agent Orange kind of stuff like that, but I don't think they're the same company.
No, Agent Orange came out of Nazi Germany.
Albert Hoffman was working for Sandoz, which is like a Switzerland company, so they're pretty close.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they were probably influenced by they were supposed to be neutral,
Yep.
but okay, yeah.
Anyway,
keep
so
going.
he was tasked with trying to find a new painkiller. So he was trying to relieve just, pain, almost something akin to ibuprofen or something like that, aspirin. So his ultimate goal was trying to find a way to ease pain for people with migraines, muscle cramps, stuff like that, right? So he's experimenting with some fungi, which is where I kind of focused in on. He's experimenting with a fungus called ergot, which grows on rye, barley, something like that. Wheat, rye, or rye.
I'm gonna introduce this funny nut fact before you get to it. Ergot led to the Salem witch trials.
You're cutting me off. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah,
bet you
that's
to
a great story.
Bicycle Day. Yeah, so that's part of Albert Hoffman's kind of story, is that he rode his bicycle home and kind of had this magical experience.
Oh, have y'all? I have a book called Bicycle Day that is like beautiful psychedelic art. My wife bought it.
I think that's inspired by Albert Hoffman. I think
you're right.
Yeah.
Everyone should look at that book once, at least. It's awesome.
What's it called?
Bicycle Day. Just image search Bicycle Day. Never mind. This isn't what I thought it was.
I don't know how to spell. Is that what you thought? It looks pretty.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. By Brian Blomerth.
It's the first I've heard about it, so I'm not claiming that this has anything to do with Albert Hoffman. Maybe if I tie his name in.
It's trippy artwork. It probably does.
Hey, look, yeah, it is document the life in Swiss chemist and first. I think I said Switzerland, right? First acid.
Yeah, you did say Switzerland.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Thank you for that, Yasin Ketchup. So, anyways,
I have to read that book now. I don't think I've read it all the way through. I didn't know that's what it was about.
it looks like more like an illustration. It doesn't look like there's actually literature.
Yeah, no, I meant like go through the whole thing. I just flip to a page and go, whoa, that's cool.
Continue on your path with the LSD, Jeremy.
So yeah, I went over his intention, or so what he was tasked with by his parent company, right? So he starts doing research into this fungi, which ergot, which I was going to get into, has a very, very extensive history with the human population, right? You can go all the way back to the Egyptians. They found ergot in some of their pottery, some of their like vases, some of their cups that they were drinking out of. So the idea there is that the Egyptians were intentionally using ergot to trip and have these, profound religious ceremonies around. So ergot's tied as early as 2500 BC with the Egyptians. So if you just extrapolate that they were tripping on LSD 2500 years ago as part of their Egyptian ceremony. So that was a good point that I wanted to make.
Well, if you've watched the show at all, everything ties back to ancient Civ.
It is interesting stuff that it all kind of is under one umbrella, which I feel like we're doing with Funny Nut Theorios.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cool how it all comes back together, like we were talking about on the recap.
Yeah. Jason, what are you sharing in chat, bro?
It's a science video, Behind the Veil, episode 3, Albert Hoffman and the History of Bicycle Day.
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
We'll have to play that on the bathroom break or something.
So this guy gets
It's 2 hours long, so that's our whole show.
Yeah, no, he gets 2 hours. You get 45 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. So ergot's a big, big thing. It's very tied to our history as humans, as a civilization, even, right?
That's part of the cause. Not to interrupt you, but that's part of the cause in The Last of Us that just came out is the ergot in the fungus that infects people.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Last of Us, but I did watch like the opening 5-minute, 10-minute scene where it's the scientists going over what they think the next global pandemic would be. And this is like 1960 when the scene is supposed to take place. But it's like, what are you most concerned about? Dude, and I thank you for that because I did want to touch that. That 1 10-minute scene that I saw of The Last of Us kind of like... When you talk about viruses, I had this argument with somebody the other night. So viruses, the way I understand it, are inanimate, right? They don't have like a consciousness. Not to say that some of the stuff has consciousness, but they're not like living creatures. They're not like, they do reproduce. They do need like food and stuff like that. They do meet like 2/3 of the criteria to be considered living, but for whatever reason, there's a big debate amongst that community that they're actually living organisms, right?
I think it's like easily argued that they're more similar to an algorithm.
So,
like
yeah.
obviously they're living, but they just live off sets of rules of yes and no.
They're Jason just said it. So they require a host to survive. So without the host, it wouldn't. Right? They're not alive.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise of The Last of Us, not to spoil it, but one of the scientists is saying the real concern should be fungi, a fungal infection, because these creatures are living and they have, like you get a rhinovirus, you get the flu, you get stuff like that doesn't alter your state of consciousness, at least not on a profound level. Like it can obviously make you feel sick and like
but you only get delirious if you're like if your fever gets too high.
Right, which is your own body responding to it, right?
Right.
But then in The Last of Us, they get into, I can't remember the names of some of these species, but there's fungi species out there that will literally hijack the consciousness of some of these ants and kind of control them.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Make them climb up. They make them climb up like blades of grass, and then the cows eat the grass, and it's like the cycle of life.
Yeah, so it's crazy premise. It makes me appreciate The Last of Us even more. Like I want to definitely watch that show. I'm kind of trying to build up a little bit of episodes, I guess, so I can binge. But it's definitely cool that they're going that route on it, right? So the idea is that this fungus is has a way of hijacking your consciousness and kind of controlling you on that level, and not necessarily just being a virus and infecting your immune system and stuff like that. So that was a really, really cool take that I'm appreciative of. But Wasabi touched on it too. Ergot, again, is just, it's like really big in our history. The Salem witch trials, there's a big theory that a lot of that was driven because of like a ergot infection in their crops. And this was actually, it was like a commercial on one of the episodes I was watching, but they were saying Plymouth Rock, Maryland was like it was designed.
Holy shit! Hang on, Sprinkles just said something that I can't pronounce in the chat. That sounds scientific.
That's the name of the fungus.
Ophlocordyceps unilaterales.
Yeah, that's the type of fungus. I
Okay.
can't say those words either, but yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, that's
Who
the
made
fungus
that word? Fuck you.
Oh, I know. I'll call it Ophiocordyceps.
It sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
Ophiocordyceps. You start tripping real bad.
Yeah, I think
Jeremy, sorry.
these images have been floating around the internet for a minute, but it's crazy stuff.
So I just watched a video on this, and ants can tell when an ant is infected, and they'll pick it up and move it way away from the colony, because as soon as it dies, it almost like explodes, and any ant that touches it would then get the virus. So the ants have learned to like remove it and isolate it and get it to go away. But then, like Drake said, some will eat it and then poop it out, and then the ants will find that, and then one will get infected. That's the whole
I'm
thing.
sorry, Jason.
Weird.
Our auto mods are censoring you. I need to take that out. That's why I don't fuck with ticks, Lyme disease. Those fuckers can potentially alter your genetics. Those fuckers can potentially alter your genetics.
Yeah, there's people that think they like grow threads, like organic thread, out of their skin because of Lyme disease. There's an entire Lyme disease conspiracy.
I'm on board, man. Fungi in general, I would do a whole season dedicated to just anything surrounded fungi, right? The mycelium network that spans the globe. It's like a global consciousness of this one species. Like it's insane stuff.
Yeah, some are superfoods and some are like super poison.
No, I mean, I think I sent a video in one of our discords about like our mushrooms, aliens, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you were this super intelligent alien species, would you invade and like make this big appearance, or would you slowly assimilate into the population and like become a part of their culture and awareness and consciousness?
Yeah.
Which that gets back to the book I keep plugging every episode, but The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, right? That Christianity was kind of based around one of these mushroom cults. It kind of ties into that, which I find very, very interesting, obviously.
Yep.
But to continue with my lesson, so he's trying to find, it was either a stimulant or he was trying to find like another painkiller. So he's experimenting with ergot, and he extracts what he called LSD-25. So this is again 1938. He keeps experimenting it, and in 1943 he accidentally brushes it on his skin by accident, and that's the bicycle day trip, right? So
it's called LSD 25 because it was his 25th attempt at synthesizing a synthetic ergot molecule.
That would.
I don't even think he succeeded, but it's close enough that you hallucinate the same way. And he got it on his skin and had the reaction, like you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So that's his bicycle day. He rides his bicycle home. He said his family was away. He was feeling like really, I don't want to say sick, but I mean, imagine not knowing what's happening, right? You're having this experience, which the only thing I could think that he would have related to was like, you know, the Salem witch trials and all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just...
Yeah, I can't imagine accidentally tripping. There was a video or a story about a guy who bought a really old synthesizer from the 70s that wasn't working, so he took it apart, and in the middle of working on it, he had like a huge trip because it was just covered in LSD because it was some trippy band that was using it in the 70s.
I hadn't heard that. That's pretty crazy. Like he accidentally like pricks his finger on something that had LSD on it.
Yeah, and he just started like off the walls, and I think it was like quite a bit of acid. I don't think it was like your normal trip that you might just take on accident.
It was some orange sunshine.
I was gonna get in that too. Like the dosage, or I guess the potency he was working with is super intense, right? Like so, the smallest milligrams of this stuff is like profoundly strong. So that's why acid. Go ahead.
I read somewhere that 50 to 100 micrograms is considered one dose.
I think it's less than that, dude. I think it's like 20 milligrams is like a standard No, like 10 milligrams.
No, I said
microgram. 10 micrograms, I think, is like a standard dosage. Ann Arbor is an LSD stronghold, long history of medical research and research chemical trials, lots of variations of LSD, DMT, etc. Yeah, 100%.
In Michigan. Interesting. Oh, yeah, no, okay. Yep, keep going. We'll jump back in.
That's your epiphany?
No, I'd have to look it up, but there is I'm getting too far ahead, so we'll get to it.
We'll get there. I was going to make a point to say that this is all fungi. So you're talking about even psilocybin, right? Like this is all kind of stemming from that same molecular structure. Like if you take DMT, psilocybin, LSD, and all this stuff, and you looked at it on just from like a chemical, I'm gonna look it up because it would prove my point.
Like the chemical bond models that you had to make in middle school.
Yeah, they're all very, 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 very similar.
With styrofoam and wooden skewers, and paint.
Yeah, because how do I do it? So presentation mode. Yeah.
Glue.
So, there's this DMT. Is this gonna work? It probably won't work, but here we go. That's exactly what I'm looking for, right?
Damn, found it on the first one.
Right.
Oh, I'm too fast with my mouse. So yeah, serotonin, which is a crazy concept too, which I think we got into on the war on drugs, but that episode is lost to the ether. But serotonin, melatonin.
No, UFOs is lost.
Whichever it was, but
yeah, UFOs is lost. War on drugs is the first one.
They all kind of follow this structure right here, this tiny little structure right here.
Wow, look how much more complex LSD is than like DMT, psilocybin, serotonin are very, very similar. LSD is the same structure, but like way bigger.
Yeah, neurotransmitters, serotonin. So the one anecdote I wanted to add to it. So there's this idea that our filter of reality, right? So I would say any sober experience you have on reality is driven by serotonin. It's the primary chemical that is driving your filter in your head, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the serotonin. When you go to sleep, it kind of flip-flops to melatonin, and you kind of go into your dream realm, which ties into DMT and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The idea there is that the DMT is, when you flood your brain with DMT, it's creating another reality. Like it's a different filter you're applying, right?
Okay.
So you're swapping the serotonin for DMT, and you're literally getting transformed into another reality. I don't even think that's fair to say. I think it just lifts the filter or puts a different filter in place so that you're experiencing a bigger part or a different aspect of the same reality. I'll say that. That's fair.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've talked about on the war on drugs and probably several others, but like the idea of clockwork elves and people having similar trips or whatever almost lends itself to the idea that you're not just tripping. There is some type of gap you're crossing, whether it's metaphysical or chemical, even. I don't know, but yeah.
And then they try to argue that it's just a subjective experience, but no, like if you try to take that route, then reality is a subjective experience for each individual person, right? And then to say that you just swap one of these chemicals for another one, that one is any less real than the one that you're experiencing right now. And that ties it back into aliens, dude. Like, you think aliens are extraterrestrial coming from some faraway star? Like, no, they could be interdimensional. They could be within the same reality. We're just filtered out from it, so you don't see them. And then when we do experience aliens, it's just them breaking through that filter. Like, they're here all along. They could be 2 feet from your face, and you just have a filter in your front of you.
It's almost like the Reality Stone in Marvel movies, or like the Scarlet Witch TV show, where she kind of forms reality, but there's
yeah,
it's not real.
She just places a filter on like the real life in a way.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, WandaVision is fantastic, high quality content. It's Disney. It is MCU. It is kind of like within that children's realm. I don't think that's fair to say,
in
man.
that children's realm.
It's pretty.
No, I rewatched
It's pretty
the
teenage.
Avengers.
It's pretty up there.
I rewatched the first Avengers. I'm pretty sure they say like GD and shit and stuff. Or yeah, no.
I don't know about GD. Maybe they might. I don't know.
It's Disney. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It depends on which god you're talking about, I guess.
I'll have to go back and watch it. Anyway,
Mickey Mouse is God for Disney. I'll tell you
Last
that.
note on it: WandaVision and Loki. Loki might be my favorite MCU content. Just gonna put that up.
Loki?
Yeah,
Are
man.
You fucking...
No.
Nah,
Hey, man,
dog.
Sacred
Spider-Man,
Timelines.
Spider-Man or Get Out.
while we're talking about Disney, what kind of car does Goofy drive?
Isn't it a bus?
No,
I thought it was like the Volkswagen bus for some reason.
no, it's a Hyundai. God damn it, I fucked it up.
Why was that shit so goofy? Because it's Tim Burton.
Yeah,
Is it
if you
not?
do it in Goofy's voice, is really funny.
He said
Hyundai.
I fucked it up. That was funny. All right. So LSD.
Yeah. I'm almost done with my history lesson, and I'm almost up to I get 10 more minutes, right? So yeah, I left off on the bicycle day. He has this bicycle trip to his house where he experiences LSD. He doesn't know he's having an acid trip, but it's just this profound experience. He goes home, sleeps it off, wakes up the next Monday morning like refreshed, rejuvenated. So he kind of abandons the idea that it's just a painkiller or another stimulant. So he starts approaching it from, hey, this could be used as a therapeutic thing. Like, this should be used in addiction, right? So if you're addicted to alcohol or something, you could take this LSD and have a therapeutic session with the therapist and have like profound breakthroughs where we're kind of rediscovering now. So that was kind of a point I was going to leave off until we got to the CIA and Nixon and all that shit. But
Are you familiar with the man with the last name Green? Did that come up in your?
I've never heard that name before now.
Okay, I don't remember his first name. I think it started with an A. I want to say Amon Green, but he was a running back in the NFL. It's not him. Either way,
Not him.
he was around when Hoffman.
Hoffman
Yes,
was the guy
Hoffman.
that discovered LSD.
Okay. In some aspect, he was involved in a situation where Hoffman thought it could be therapeutic, and this guy with the last name Green wanted to use it for war purposes, and like recognized the profound effects, but wanted to apply it in a not altruistic way.
That's kind of what the whole point of me starting was to kind of build the case why the CIA was attracted to this stuff. Right. I do have a couple more anecdotes.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Drake.
I was about to say. Well, I can tell you, the CIA were super interested in that because they were thinking that communists, aka the Soviet Union, had drugs that can control someone's mind, and so they were thinking that they could use LSD to brainwash and get secrets out of POWs.
This all dives straight into the middle of what I'm prepared to talk about. So you said you had a couple more anecdotes. Let's hit those, and I'll tie us in the beginnings of the CIA and why they thought that and all that.
Fair enough. So I know when we were talking about JFK, there was kind of some hints at him doing LSD, right, in that whole realm. I think one of the names that got thrown around when we were talking about JFK and acid was Alex Huxley.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Does
that
name ring a
again?
bell? Alex
No.
Huxley. He was a poet slash author, so he's writing some pretty out there. It's not science fiction; it's just I think novels. But he is very much experimenting with LSD. So when Albert Hoffman discovers LSD, his Sandoz company, once they kind of go the therapeutic route that this is going to be used as that route, they start giving this stuff away for anybody that says, "Hey, I want to do some research on this." So they just start shipping this stuff out free. There's no regulation at this point. There's no idea that it has no medical or medicinal use. So they're just anybody willing to do research in LSD, we're going to ship this to you. Let us know what you find out, right? It's crazy to think that at one point in time.
It was like salvia whenever it was in every head shop and you could just climb a flight of stairs made out of laughter.
Yeah. And K2, spice and all that. It's just the same.
But it got cut off way later, and so Sandoz was actually dealing with the CIA as well, and I think they were giving it away so they didn't have to sell it to the CIA.
Well, I mean, if the CIA would have asked,
for a little bit, they were the only source, and at the time, the CIA was also experimenting.
So, couple more points. So Alex Huxley was one of the ones that reached out and said that he wanted to try LSD. So that kind of, to me, tied in JFK, right? Because him and Alex Huxley were supposed to be pretty close at some point, right?
Uh-huh.
So that tied that into me. So we're just coming full circle again on some of this stuff. One of the other parallels I wanted to draw was the same time this stuff is going on. So 1943, when Albert Hoffman is discovering LSD and stuff like that, Oppenheimer is doing his research on the atom bomb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the coolest point that I wanted to make was we have these powers that are coming up that are trying to discover this world-ending power. So you have all these scientists focused on how can we kill the most people, be the most effective with this, and they're researching this atom bomb. And then the universe hands us this LSD weapon, which is a weapon for the mind. And it is supposed to, in my idea, it's supposed to teach love and empathy and connect us, that we're all one and stuff like that. What we're going to get into is obviously it was abused and tainted and perverted, but the message behind all of this, and I'm not even going to say LSD, but psilocybin, ergot, all this stuff originally to me was, it was a spiritual experience for like, you take any major religion, any major culture, they had dedicated shaman that they would dose with this stuff, go on these profound experiences, and then come back and teach it. They're like, hey, here's this spirituality that we're experiencing with all this. But you could trace it back to every major culture, right? So LSD was just an extension of it, and it was not an extension, but it was the furthest extreme to it, right? We talked about the potency.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, so you have the rising of the atom bomb, and to meet it, we get introduced to LSD, this super potent trip that is supposed to teach love and empathy. And one of the terms I found in this research was mind at large. It represents every thought of every living thing is one mind since the Big Bang. So we're all hardwired into this one living consciousness. Your brain acts like a filter to prevent sensory overload because we're just tiny little human beings that couldn't handle the universe's consciousness. LSD is kind of thought of as like a ease to that filter. It kind of wings us into this bigger idea that there's a universal consciousness that we're all very much hardlined into. We've just been kind of put through this filter to kind of treat us like children, right? So that's again the idea of if aliens did come, would they even want to talk to us because we're just so immature, we're so like remedial, so young within ourselves as a species that we haven't broken through these filters yet. So that ties in my whole belief of how the universe again works. So I would preach that all day long. It was mind at large.
That, or they're teaching the most elite people and scientists, and we're learning what we can from aliens in some hidden bunker, and they might have weapons and secret technology that we don't even know about.
For sure.
Dude, I so agree that, I agree with both of y'all, and it works in levels in that, like, Jeremy's right in that there is a human filter. And Drake is right that there is a socioeconomic filter slapped on top of that. And it's not even necessarily socioeconomic. It's just like the people with power filtering to people with less power.
Right.
In whatever way they maintain it, whether it be like political or monetary or economic or whatever. But so you brought up the kind of the timing between the experiments with LSD and Manhattan Project.
Yep. I didn't say Manhattan Project, but that is what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so Manhattan Project is where they're studying nuclear weapons and things like that. So
Yes, sir.
this is the inception of what will eventually become MK Ultra, and it starts in the midst of World War II. So the Allied forces in Britain specifically were very scared that the Nazis were going to use biological weapons because they had the ability. It's kind of understated.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that was something I read was like it was justification for doing some of this stuff is like if we're not doing it, then our enemy will do it. So we have to be on even playing field, right?
That's the justification the entire time
for everything.
And so somehow Germany was in fact very capable of instituting like World War II as far as how technologically advanced they were from the rest of the world, and their secret technologies, some of them being the biological stuff, end up like they invented sarin gas and used it in the concentration camps. Obviously, they invented modern rocketry. Just
Oppenheimer was German.
Yeah, there's an endless list, and so second only to the Manhattan Project in the intelligence agencies was the biological warfare sect of the government. So like half of their worry is nuclear arms and bombs and military equipment, and half of it is biological sciences and chemical sciences and things like that, as it applies to war, because Germany had proven themselves very capable, which is terrifying. But
we should do an episode on Oppenheimer. I know the movie's going to be coming out soon too, so probably needs to correspond with that. Yeah. But what made him defect? Because he was German and then came over to help us. Like, I want to know what was going on there. He might have been Jewish. Was he Jewish? I don't want to make that clear.
I don't think he was Jewish, but he was definitely German. And
to the extent
Germans funded what you're wearing, Jeremy.
NASA, absolutely. Well, they didn't fund it, but they definitely
they helped create it.
They ran it for sure. Yeah. So the Allies were so scared that Churchill asked the U.S., which was the only rivaling science to develop biological weapons, to drop on Germany if they attacked Britain. And FDR was like, "Sure, we'll definitely look into that." Britain later went, "Hey, forget the crazy weird biological bomb. Just give us an anthrax bomb," which is also terrifying. But that set off the chain reaction for the U.S. to like ramp up their biological and chemical weapons research.
Was there not some meeting at some point that said we're not going to do biological warfare? Like,
is the Nuremberg Code, which is like it's the Nuremberg Trials. It's the Geneva Convention. Which is the rules. It's the rules to war. Yeah, which very specifically states don't use chemical or biological weapons. But
this was coming out of like mustard gas and shit like that, right?
Yeah. But anyway, Britain asking and a general fear of the Nazis having biological warfare, which they obviously did because they were doing those crazy tests, and all the other countries figured it out eventually and started poaching their scientists and giving them anonymity in like war crime trials, the Nuremberg trials, like I just talked about, to bring them to their own country. And the Americans were saying we can't let them get in Soviet hands because the Cold War popped off right after World War II. But that was called Operation Paperclip. Did I mention that?
No, but yeah, that is I've done research on that. That's cool. There's a lot of books on that.
It's a program to bring Axis scientists to allied countries to further their own technology. And normally it's applied to the Manhattan Project, like we were talking about the nukes and stuff. But the second highest one that no one ever talks about is the predecessor to MK Ultra, which is biological and chemical weapons research. The army, after they get this request from Britain, gathers a bunch of scientists and is like, hey, they want us to make a crazy bio bomb. Can we do it? And every scientist was like, absolutely fucking not. That's crazy. How would you contain that into a bomb? And then how would you allow soldiers to fly that dangerous bomb and then drop? How would you even allow that bomb to drop and then spread somehow? Because viruses don't survive explosions generally. But this one guy, Ira Baldwin, who is the what do you call it? He shepherded the way for the guy that I'm really about to talk about. He was his teacher in college or whatever. Said, yeah, you could probably do that. So they made him head of the Chemical Warfare Service and like a secret government agency to do that. And then to further the talk on Operation Paperclip, because this is where a lot of our science comes from. I think I said this earlier. Sarin gas was brought to the U.S. by Nazi scientists and plenty of other rocket technology. But one of the guys was named Kurt Bloma. He was the Nazis' director of research into biological warfare. He was captured and detained after World War II. He joined the Nazi Party in 1931, became a member of the Reichstag in the 1940s. He was the deputy minister of health for the Nazi, for like whenever the Nazis eventually took over, and then was a director of a medical complex at a Polish university where he tested the effects of germs and viruses on prisoners. He had a tumor farm where they cultivated malignant viruses on people.
What the fuck?
And he developed the aerosol delivery system for nerve gas that was tested in Auschwitz.
Can you elaborate on the
Holy
tumor
shit.
farm?
I didn't know any of that.
He had a very long series of very fucked up human-based unwitting participant experiments, and the worst one that I picked out was he had a flock of people who he was growing malignant viral tumors on to test.
This
and
is
by
the
test,
U.S. government?
I mean, no, this is while he was a Nazi, but
Okay.
immediately after that he was brought to the U.S.
I might have moved
So-
out. Oh, we hired him because of his resume.
We saved his fucking life.
Yeah. Instead of going to prison,
Yeah, or being put to death.
being put to death, either or, they
he lived
brought him
a
over
cush-
here and
he
they
lived
put them. They put them all in but they put them all in different sections where
Yeah.
it's a ton of Germans in different towns, and they kind of
Yeah.
just take over, and they're all fucking Nazis, and people around don't even know that they're living around Nazis.
He lived a very cush life with a very high paying job.
And most of them did. It was crazy because that's the information they had to give.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, but there's one more that I want to get into because this stretches another line, which is something that I didn't realize. But if you think about it for a half a second, you go, of course, that's what happened. So the head of it's called Unit 731, and it was based out of Manchuria, China. But it was the Japanese biological weapons program, and the guy who ran it was called Shiro Ishii. This guy's worse. He tested on anywhere from 3,000, which is like what everyone believes, up to 12,000 because he deleted a lot of his records or destroyed a lot of his files.
12,000 people?
3 to 12,000 is the
Oh
range.
my freaking goodness.
He tested on captured Chinese, Korean, Mongolian. There's rumors about American soldiers, but there's no proof of it. So
Well, they
leave
would
it
have had a lot of
at that.
POWs at the time.
Yeah, criminals and people with anti-Japanese sentiments and mental patients. He called his patients logs, so I'm going to refer to them as logs, but just understand that log means live human person.
Peoples.
He was saved by General Douglas MacArthur, who granted him amnesty and installed him in American labs in East Asia with the excuse that America was racist against Asians at the time, so he probably wouldn't have done well here. But
What time was this?
This is at the end of World War II, so it's
Yeah, so that makes
mid-to-late
sense because a lot of Japanese Americans that were over here were put in concentration camps and
yeah,
all
because we
kinds
had
of shit.
internment camps. Yeah, And so
they weren't
that's
concentration
what they
camps,
used
but
to.
we definitely
Okay,
had
sorry,
camps.
they weren't concentration camps. I'll take that back. Correct me.
I mean, you want
They
to
were
argue
in-
about what concentration camp is, but we did pull Japanese American citizens away from their homes and put them in camps, just as the Nazis did.
Yeah.
Except
We
didn't.
called them internment camps.
Internment
I bet
camps.
I bet if
Thank
we
you for correcting me.
I bet if we studied for a week, we could find some atrocities, but I don't know any off the top of my head. So, so he was saved, and we installed him in a lab overseas. We had a bunch of labs overseas, and that's the part that I didn't like put two and two together. That even in the 40s and 50s, the CIA was international. That these programs were everywhere. West Germany after World War II was ours. We had a bunch of shit there.
That makes sense.
But Shiro Ishii, his experiments include, this is a longer list. Stop me if you want to. These are awful. He would expose his logs to poison gas. Some of them were slowly roasted by electricity to determine the voltages they needed to induce death. He hung people upside down to study natural choking, locked people in the high pressure chambers until their eyes popped out, spun them in centrifuges until they died.
Oh, I've been on that ride at the Confest.
What?
You know the
Spun
little
them
alien
in-
ship that spins you around real fast?
Oh, yeah.
Where you can like walk on the wall if you're real cool or a carny.
Yeah.
But until you die, like way faster than that. So that infected them with anthrax, syphilis, plague, and cholera, amongst other diseases. Forcibly impregnated them to study children, babies, infants, toddlers.
All right.
God.
Bound people to stakes to test the flamethrowers on them. Froze them to observe hypothermia. Injected air and animal blood into their veins. Dissected people alive. Exposed them to fleas and lice infected with plague and other viruses. And at the end of when he knew all was lost, he executed the last 150 people to hide his experiments, and then had his whatever you want complex destroyed.
All the worst shit you hear about in science fiction, any worst scenario in Game of Thrones that they showed, like is
Yeah.
probably, I mean, without doubt, drawn from reality. Like they took the worst parts of humanity
100%.
and just put it into fictional stories.
They tried to bring him, and the first time they tried to bring Kurt Bloma, the other Nazi scientist I talked about, they tried to bring him to here, and
States.
they had a site. We'll get to the name of it later, but there was a media uproar about. It was kind of out that they were bringing in Nazi scientists and changing their names and letting them live and working for us, and but there was a bit of a hubbub, so they didn't do it.
Or at least they told the public they didn't do it.
Right, but they installed him overseas, and they brought Kurt Bloma in later, which, I mean, they still got him in, but it took a little bit. And there's another scientist in there. I forget his name. I think his last name was Schreiber. He eventually gets in, and he worked at Walter Reed. He was like the head of the Nazi, like he was head Dr. Nazi. We'll get to him though. So there's kind of a timeline. That's the precursors, and then as far as MK Ultra goes, there's a bit of its own timeline, and then so this starts out with a Hungarian cardinal name. If you want to pull this link up, it's on the show outline. It's the first link under my notes. It's just as wicked. No, it's a New York Times article. I'm proving myself right here. He had a show trial. He was very anti-communist, Hungarian, high in the church. They gave him a show trial to the Soviet Union did to charge him with whatever the shit they made up. But at the show trial, he seemed out of it, and like this is the first instance where the intelligence communities thought that mind control was real. It was this guy in his show trial because he was admitting to crimes he didn't commit and seemed like not like a person.
Yeah.
So this is the first assumption that the CIA had, that the USSR had mind control capabilities. This is when who goes to Truman? The CIA went to Truman. I forget who the head of it was at the time, and Truman approves to study mind control and gives the job to the CIA.
Is it Alan Dulles? Am I wrong?
No,
That's
no,
much
Dulles,
later.
Dulles wasn't in yet, but
Dulles wasn't in yet. Okay.
ooh,
Project Artichoke.
I want to talk about Alan Dulles.
I am gonna dig. It's a precursor to Artichoke. It's
Oh, so
Yeah.
MK Naomi.
MK Delta. I haven't heard
So
MK Delta
one thing
yet.
I need to say, there's 100, from what I've researched, there's 149 sub projects of MK Ultra. So there's
Yeah.
like MK Ultra testing for like the different forms of things they do, but there's also many other tests. Some are like testing LSD. They like let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to back up. So
You're getting ahead of me too. I'm gonna get there, but I'll go.
I'm just making one little example. So
Yeah.
they have CIA agents that are pretending to be prostitutes, and they go get their Johns,
Yeah.
and they'll bring them up to a hotel room.
That's
and
Midnight
meanwhile-
Climax.
Okay, so this is Midnight Climax. Thank you.
appropriate
I'm gonna
Name
get there.
of it.
I'm gonna dig into that later. I got a list of these. I'll let you hop in when I get to them. How about that? Let me
That
get
sounds good. I don't want to ruin it if you're going to dig into it.
So the first project is MK Naomi. It's a joint program between the SOD, which is the Special Operations Division. It's a subdivision of the Secret Service. That's the second link there, if you want to look that up. So
What was it
people
called?
know I'm not lying.
It's on your line.
Yeah, it's the second link. That link looks incomplete though, so you might have to copy paste that whole thing. It looks stupid.
Nope.
Okay. And so the SOD starts making a large amount of poisons and diseases for the CIA to work with. So they're working in tandem. That's why the project name is Naomi. It's the CIA and the Special Operations Division under the Secret Service. In 49, they started to aerosolize shit, which means put it in a spray, but to massive proportions. So in 49, there's an island off Antigua, and they killed hundreds of animals on that island because they aerosolized it. It was an uninhabited island, and they killed like almost everything that
You
lived
just
there.
said they killed a lot of animals. How could it be uninhabited?
Well, it's uninhabited by humans, is what my point was. And then a second test was they had agents pretend to be air quality technicians in the Pentagon and sprayed the air ducts with bacteria, and determined that if they had sprayed a poison, half the building would have died. So they're not telling anybody what they're doing, and they're just like, how detrimental can this stuff be?
Dude, that's the
and-
same story as the Olsen thing. I'm sure you're gonna get to it, but there was some
I'm
like
absolutely gonna
meeting
get to
in a cabin or something, and they're just secretly dosing themselves somehow. That's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
But
No, I'm gonna. Yeah, that's a whole ass story too.
You're
This
a
might be-
moron.
This might be a two-parter. We might have to get to the Manson stuff next time, but
this is 100% a
Come on,
two-parter.
guy. We still got an hour.
I know, but I'll speak quickly. Is what I'm saying. Then in 50, this is only the Special Operations Division. The CIA was involved in these. This is what the Special Operations Division was doing. So in 50, they released a red tinted germ in the air off the coast of San Francisco to see how far it would go and how many people they could kill if it was a deadly pathogen or toxin or whatever. But they didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell anybody in San Francisco. And it infected or affected all of San Francisco, but it reached 8 neighboring cities, including like Oakland and like whatever else was around there. Oakland and...
Did you say San Francisco?
Yeah, San Francisco and Oakland are separated by the San Francisco Bridge. It's a fucking huge bridge.
Is Oakland not south of Los Angeles? or
Oakland is
southeast,
way
west?
down. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
no, no,
Oakland's
no.
not connected to San Francisco.
We need to
Oakland
do a
is right next-
geography lesson, apparently.
Yeah, dude, geography. Because pull up the map. 'cause
Oakland-
I swear Oakland's not connected to San Francisco.
Oakland is like 20 minutes east of San Francisco. It's over the bridge.
I thought it was further down towards
Yeah, I
Anaheim.
thought it was. I mean, I think you're right, Clayton. I don't know why I thought it was.
Maybe
I
I'm
have-
wrong too, but I swear it was down towards Anaheim and shit
There
like
was
that.
Fresno, San Francisco,
I have
Oakland.
driven
They're
from-
right next to each other.
Oh,
I
okay,
have
I'm
driven-
wrong. I'm wrong.
I've driven from San Francisco to Oakland.
Oakland is east of LA.
You should have started with that, and I wouldn't have argued with you.
Oakland is
Yeah, well.
east of San Francisco. My bad, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just across the bridge.
There's
yeah.
Oakland right
Oh,
here.
my bad. All right.
So 11 people, they did this. They peppered San Francisco and 8 neighboring cities. 11 people got UTIs and were pissing out red specks, and one of them died because he was recovering from surgery, and he couldn't recover from the surgery and the UTI infection. So that killed a person. But this is just what they were willing to do, and the Special Operations Division was intent on keeping it like, we're not trying to affect people, but we do want to test ranges of what we know could operate in the same way while not infecting them. But the CIA went a totally different way. So that's MK, Naomi. That's them working together. Then the CIA kind of ups their shit in 1950 and introduces Project Bluebird, which is the precursor to MK Ultra. I'm sure y'all both saw that.
Yes.
Whatever y'all are reading. And they were using the SOD's technology to study mind control and all types of chemical and biological warfare. They wanted this all came out in memos. They wanted to use prisoners, war criminals, and defectors for broad studies aimed at the possibility of using special interrogation techniques to control people. So that was kind of their objective for Project Bluebird, which they took advantage of. Alan Dulles is hired in 1951.
Oh, it's that early? I thought it was later than that.
Was he was on the Warren Commission,
right?
And he was the head of the CIA that JFK fired, which is made it weird that he was on the Warren Commission. It also turns out he ran the guy that ran MK Ultra.
Who replaced
He
Dulles?
knew all about it.
Was it Bush?
No.
See, I thought they were.
No.
I thought they came together somehow. I don't know. Never mind.
No.
I don't think it was Bush.
Disregard.
Dulles was in the 60s and 70s.
HW,
Bush was in the
not
80s.
W.
He's in the 80s.
Yeah, we're talking about senior Bush, but
No,
I don't think
not
it
even.
was him right after Dulles.
Okay, my bad. Never mind.
Oh, Senior Bush might. No, he wasn't the head of the CIA after Dulles, but
He was head of the CIA.
at one point, I think.
He was at one point. I was just saying. I thought Dulles and Bush had some kind of connection. Which
Look it up.
yeah, it doesn't
I
matter.
saw nothing about
Doesn't
their
matter.
overlapping. It is.
I didn't mean to
possibility.
invoke Bush. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll leave it open for.
Fuck
possibility.
Bush.
So he becomes the deputy director for plans in 1951, which means he's not running the CIA, but he's running their covert operations, which is like the majority of their budget. He's basically running the CIA, just not to the public.
Officially.
Yeah. And it is at that time that they open a secret prison that is protected by the U.S. Army, and it's called at Camp King. The secret prison is called Villa Schuster. It was like a old abandoned stronghold of some kind. I didn't get too deep into that, but this is that other German scientist that I was talking about, or head of health or whatever. He went by Doc Fisher, but his real name was General Walter Schreiber. He was the former Surgeon General of the Nazi Army. At the time, he worked at Walter Reed Hospital, which I'm pretty sure that's the one that the president goes to if he gets sick.
Makes sense.
And if not, it's as important. So he was brought in to work for the CIA under Project Bluebird, but he oversaw a bunch of the concentration camp experiments and he was eventually made staff doctor at Camp King, which is the CIA secret prison where they're testing a bunch of people. But they had secret prisons all over West Germany and Japan where they experimented on Korean prisoners, in the Japan one specifically. And these international prisons had less oversight from U.S. laws, but they were trying to practice hypnosis, deprivation, and other types of interrogation
That's a good
experiments.
segue.
As far as like not letting people sleep and shit like that.
I don't know how many people I've talked to over the past week promoting MLK, and I would say 80% of them had no idea what MK Ultra was. Like,
Yeah.
Really?
it blows my mind what people
That's
don't.
crazy.
And the first response, my first thing that I say to them is like, "Have you seen Stranger Things?"
Yeah. No, I probably 6 months ago I was talking to my mom and grandma, and I was like, MK Ultra, and they were like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it was the CIA program where they were dosing people to LSD to try and control their minds, and they were like, that's not real. And I was like, it is so real, it's in government documents.
They literally
Like,
went to
MLK
Congress
Ultra.
and they it was illegal on many different ways because they were working on their American turf, and you're not supposed to do that as the CIA.
Yeah. Well, I was just like, there's a minimum of 30 .gov hyperlinks that I could send you.
Yeah, for sure.
We normally take a break now. That's up to y'all.
I could run and get a beer or something. Use the bathroom. I don't have a video to play, and I don't want to do the.
I'm honestly about halfway through.
Do you think I have at least 20 to 30 minutes to cover what I need to cover?
Oh yeah.
Okay, then let's take a bathroom break.
Cool.
Okay.
Right.
Oh well, you're getting a waiting screen.
We're back.
Okay, so I left this off in 1950s, correct?
Somewhere in the 50s, we're a little out there.
We kind of got off on a tangent on Dulles and his ties to the Kennedy assassination. Oh, here's something I wanted to point out that's going to be a little bit out of the timeline. So Allen Dulles, head of the CIA, JFK fires him. I'm going to bring up other points that are related to this, but he is head of the Warren Commission, which is the commission to find out what happened to JFK, if it was a conspiracy or if it was a lone nut. And they determined it was, and that was Lee Harvey Oswald. While Allen Dulles is on that commission, Jack Ruby kills Lee Harvey Oswald. Jack Ruby's doctor, about halfway through, maybe not halfway through, at some point during the trial, Jack Ruby gets a doctor, a psychologist named Jolly West, who, and about that time, Jack Ruby has a mental breakdown and like can't remember his name and shit, is all fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And Allen Dulles and Jolly West are both tied back to MK Ultra. So
Ruby's
they scrambled that dude's fucking brains.
Ruby's the guy that killed Oswald, right?
Yeah. And while he's in jail on trial for killing Lee Harvey Oswald, the patsy for the JFK assassination, he goes completely crazy while his doctor is tied to MK Ultra and the head of the commission that is studying whether that was suspicious or not was head of MK. Like, It's just
Why are these two things connected? Like, why?
Yeah.
You're
You know what's scary? You know what's scary is it ties into Batman Begins with the Scarecrow drugging Falcone, like and him going fucking crazy out of nowhere and like using those hallucinogens and shit.
Yeah, who thought that story was based on historical fact?
Well, no, man, Christopher Nolan, he knows some shit, man. All his movies have CIA ties and all kinds of weird shit. He knows some shit, man. He's scary.
We always make the joke that like, okay, so the CIA is going to investigate the CIA, or the government's going to investigate the government. Who gives a shit what you say? You're investigating yourself. And like the Warren Commission is investigating someone who's being controlled by the CIA. It like just the Pepe Sylvia lines in this thing. There is no Pepe Sylvia. It's crazy. So the guy we're here to talk about is Sidney Gottlieb. I read a book and I linked that book in content sharing. If you want to pull that link up.
Can't do Pfizer.
No, the NPR.org.
Content sharing.
Yeah, it's right above Pfizer response.
Oh, there's not a thumbnail for it apparently.
Yeah.
CIA's secret quest for mind control, torture, LSD. We didn't talk about remote viewing. Did you guys get into any of that? No, I'm not gonna.
No, I didn't have time. But the book is called Poisoner in Chief, and it's about Sidney Gottlieb, who in 1951 is hired by Alan Dulles because he wanted to expand Operation Bluebird or Project Bluebird, and he renames it Artichoke.
Mm-hmm.
And right about that time, a journalist by the name of Ed Hunter, who later was connected with Operation Mockingbird, which came out in the Church Committee or whatever. Operation Mockingbird being that CIA infiltrated articles in mainstream media of the time.
Correct.
One of those guys they infiltrated introduced the first article with the idea of brainwashing from the communists. And so the CIA took notice of the Cardinal
in the
that we talked
50s,
about
he
earlier.
arranged for the CIA to buy the entire world supply of LSD. What the fuck? Mm-hmm. Oh, I heard some stuff on Ken Kinsley. Just real quick, I don't mean to distract, but Ken Kinsley, and there was another guy, which was I think another like poet or something around the time, but I can't remember his name. But those two names are mentioned. They're two characters in Mad Men. And the dynamic I got from the relationship was kind of like, I feel like Mad Men was doing a parody of it the whole time, but it's Kinsley and like it starts with a G. Ginsburg. Kinsley and Ginsburg in Mad Men are like parallels to this Kinsey, and there's another Ginsburg character that was part of my research. It's right there, Ginsburg. Allen Ginsburg and Ken Kinsley. Those two names are almost verbatim the names of the characters in Mad Men, which is set in the 60s. So
I've never seen Mad Men. I would have never.
I haven't either.
Mad Men's fantastic content. You should definitely watch it.
So in 51, they start scaring the population into thinking that the USSR is mind controlling people. Cold War is popping off full heavy heat. They're still on Project Manhattan and shit like that. But at this time, this is the second most invested in secret military project. And they intensify experiments. At this point of reading this book, I got real tired of writing down atrocities, so it's on me that I'm not listing every terrible thing they did. But I do have this list. It's very vague because, I didn't want to sit here and talk.
I don't know how many atrocities more I can take, but go ahead.
Right. So they were working on electroshock therapy, radiation exposure, electro sleep studies. I didn't even take the time to figure out what that meant. They finally built that bomb that Gottlieb's protege, he was the protege, his mentor talked about when he went to the government meeting. And they built an 8-foot round bomb filled with biological weapons. They never dropped anywhere, but they built one. They started experimenting with hypnosis and pharmaceutical drugs. This is where LSD comes in. But before LSD, they go through a timeline of every other drug you can think of and they don't start studying LSD until Gottlieb comes in. But they spent time on THC, which reminds me of the beginning of Pineapple Express, where Bill Hader's like,
he's like, you know what? I have a problem with you and your fucking military. He's like, one, lots of dudes. Where are the movies? And I fucking agree.
I feel like a giant stack of flapjacks.
yeah. And then so they go from
Illegal.
Illegal. Yeah, dude, that's one of the best movies.
They go from THC to cocaine, and then they were like, "No, people are just too happy on cocaine. We're not going to take anybody's mind over with this."
For like 30 minutes.
And then they go to heroin, and they had enough success to keep the project going because they were like, "Oh, if you give them heroin and then you don't give them heroin, they do what you tell them to because they're crazily addicted to heroin."
We got into that in the war on drugs stuff, like them intentionally introducing heroin and cocaine into these
yeah, okay. And so we
communities.
talked about it in context with the Vietnam War. This is in the fucking 50s. So in the 50s, the government knew that if you deprive heroin addicts of heroin, they'll do whatever you ask them to. And then in the 1970s, they went, we're going to give all of our soldiers heroin.
Yeah.
You said 70s,
when did
right?
heroin become illegal? Because it was legal and they'd use it in surgeries and
That we were going to get into the Nixon administration, I hope, because that's when
they still use it, but it has a different name.
I think I had it on my notes, but they
give you fentanyl.
Yes.
You can get fentanyl at the hospital. That's the same as getting heroin.
Oh,
yeah, you're right. It's stronger.
It was 1970, the Controlled Substance Act. That's when Nixon declared the war on drugs, which we touched on last episode. We held a whole episode dedicated to war on drugs, which we need to revisit. But the whole idea of war on anything is ridiculous. You can't fight a war on terrorism. There's no one terrorist out there you can go kill and go, we won. It's just a perpetual idea. Like, here's
never
a
stop.
Blank check to the military to go fight this war that will never end.
Yeah.
That's my rant. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, especially when you're supplying what you're fighting.
Right.
Okay. I've got 15 minutes to get through a page and a half. I'm going to run through some of this.
Go ahead.
In 52, Gottlieb, the head of the MK Ultra now, hired by Dulles to head up MK Ultra. He tries LSD for the first time and believes that it is the key to controlling minds. He created a plan that was never put into action. That was the same plan as when they spread that red bacteria over San Francisco, except he wanted to do it with LSD. So he is fucking nuts. In 53, Eisenhower put Allen Dulles, to run the CIA and appointed his brother John Foster Dulles the Secretary of State. So the guy that runs the military, as far as the executive branch is concerned, is head of his brother who runs all the covert operations. So shit explodes. Eisenhower makes that speech about the industrial military I think it's Eisenhower. I apply to every president that's ever lived because they all did it. But I think he, when he left office, gave a speech about how we need to be wary of the industrial military complex. He hired the two brothers who ran that bitch.
We need to do a whole episode, which we kind of hinted at, but nepotism within the government and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Well, and so about this time, Gottlieb starts introducing experiments into domestic hospitals, doctors' offices, and prisons. This is when he starts building the 143 or 146 sub projects underneath MK Ultra. One of them was a New York Psychiatric Institute. The doctor's name was Paul Hoek, Hoak. And he was testing mescaline on a tennis player who came in for depression after divorce. He didn't tell him what he was doing. He just had a nurse walk in and inject him. And so like he didn't know he assumed he was going to be administered drugs, but he had no idea it was mescaline. They didn't tell him
mescaline is on par
was.
With like Ellis. I mean, it's the same shit, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier.
It was the first synthesized psychological
Mescaline
drug.
isn't synthesized. I mean, it can be probably, but mescaline is a natural.
It's in whatever type of cactus or whatever. But
San Jose. You could go to Home Depot right now and buy San Jose cactus and get mescaline. Just FYI.
It was the first one that I think Nazi Germany started testing on. But so he starts injecting him. He did it 5 times over a month, and then on like the 6th time, he received a dose 14 times greater than all the doses he had before. This is a synthetic concentrate of mescaline. 14 times larger, and he died.
Is this the only known occurrence of overdosing from a psychedelic?
I don't know. But, I mean, it's to the extent where he was going to the doctor, and then the doctor killed him with an overdose of mescaline, which is an insane amount.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
This is a concession of things he did in a row that are fucked up. He opened the first safe house that predated Operation Midnight Climax in Greenwich Village, where he got a guy who was a narcotics detective in New York to run this safe house, and they just dosed random people with LSD and studied them. They were just tricking people into coming to this apartment, giving them LSD, and watching what would happen.
How were they tricking them?
He would pose.
They put it in their drinks.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was the prostitutes
when they got him there. But to invite them, no, the second one was prostitutes. The first one is he would pose as different characters and go to nightclubs and get them to come to the apartment and then dose them. Like he was just trying to. I mean, it's the CIA tricking people into coming to an apartment, acting as a normal dude. I'm pretty sure they're pretty good at it. He probably went, "Hey, I got some killer drugs. You want to try them?"
He pulled that Jeffrey Dahmer shit. Like, "Hey, come back at my place."
It is around this time that Jolly West was introduced and was researching ways to create dissociative states. He was a sub-project number 43, and they built him a $20,000 laboratory, which I think was at
Is that Haight-Ashbury?
Haight-Ashbury, yeah.
Yeah, I'll get into that in a bit.
What was that?
Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic.
Haight-Ashbury I thought was Timothy Leary and all of them.
No, Haight-Ashbury is where Charles Manson...
Haight-Ashbury was the West Coast. Timothy Leary was set up in another house on the East Coast at the same time. My bad.
Interesting. So there's like, have you all ever seen Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks?
No, I have not.
We did that on your show on Sunday.
So at the same time that Sidney Gottlieb is running MK Ultra, he is head of another department where he creates gadgets for undercover agents, like pins with aerosols in them and shit, like Men in Black shit. It doesn't flash a light and you don't lose your memory, but it's like what you think is actually imaginable. They made it. James Bond type shit. Actually, when he died, a couple of the newspapers had like words to say about him. The Guardian called him everything you've dreamed about a mad scientist, except he was real. He was compared to James Bond's Q and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and The Independent called him a living vindication for conspiracy theorists.
I'm keeping up with Chad at least. Thank you, Sprinkles.
Yeah, I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We're all good.
But what's really interesting about him, he's born with deformed club feet, and he couldn't walk until he was 12. You know, Forrest Gump had to wear those braces. Yes. When he turned 12, he got the braces off. He had like 3 surgeries or something.
Are we tying Tom Hanks into MK Ultra? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, accidentally, because Sidney Gottlieb also had a stutter. He had a stutter, and he had club feet and had to wear braces.
We can tie him to...
That was 2 Tom Hanks movies that you just tied into. So there's something there. Funny Nut Theory.
Funny Nut Theory.
Let's make it up. Yeah. So while he's making these gadgets in Bridge of Spies, the pilot is given a coin that comes apart and has a little needle in it. And if you pull the sheath off the needle and scratch yourself with it, you die. It's like a cyanide pill, but it looked like a $50 or a quarter or something. And so he was making all these gadgets. He's tied to like a bunch of assassinations because he was building the gadgets that they were trying to use. Specifically Castro, he was in charge of making a wetsuit that was filled with a like a flesh-eating bacteria.
I heard
But the
about
guy
that,
who was
yeah.
supposed to give it to him went, "I'm not giving Castro a flesh-eating bacteria, fucking whatever." And like he had they went through a series of plans that they had to kill Castro. That he was the guy who was going to run the team that was going to invent the thing needed.
I had a note
Going,
on
"Hey,
that.
Yeah.
That it's just ironic that they think they could give LSD to all these like dictators and kind of get them to go on board with the like the empirical system, not the empirical system, but like the empire game, right?
Mhm.
Like to overthrow communism and all this stuff. But LSD, by all evidence, would turn people into communists, right? I want to say that that's not fair, but the sense of like community and helping each other out, right?
Yeah. It gives them an outside perspective on the idea of being human.
And it's ironic to me that the
For sure.
CIA is trying to use it as this tool to like turn people into,
Yeah.
I don't want to say capitalists either, but you understand what I'm saying.
So another point I have that Drake probably knows is that Whitey Bulger was dosed almost every day for 15 months straight. So let's call it 6 days a week for 15 months. So 6 times 45, whatever that is, it's huge.
Yeah.
90 times 3, it's 270 times. He took 270 doses.
Over how
within
many
a
days?
15 months.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 15 days. I was about to be like, holy shit, that
Well,
guy's
that's
in
minimum,
another
'cause
universe.
It said almost every day, so I said he missed once a week, but who knows? By Dr. Carl Pfeiffer in prison. And he was told it was going to be an experiment to cure schizophrenia, and then he got out, and then he found the doctor's name and said, if I ever see that guy, I'm going to fucking kill him. Because he didn't tell anybody in prison what he was seeing or the experiences he was having, because he was afraid they were going to send him to the nut house and he would never get out of prison.
That's what's crazy. It's LSD.
He was having the craziest fucking trips and going, I'm Whitey Bulger.
I had one anecdote I wanted to add, and it was to the Timothy Leary point. But after Hoffman and stuff starts handing the LSD off to these researchers, Timothy Leary starts getting more and more pronounced and leading that whole movement. But Timothy Leary was on board with it being therapeutic and changing people's consciousness and turning them into, loving, empathetic people. So Timothy Leary originally started targeting like inmates, like convicts that were in jail for all these serious crimes in the hopes of converting them over and like winning them over and stuff. So if the CIA took that game plan and ran it to use it to the opposite effect, which that's what I'm assuming you're talking about, right? Like, fuck them.
No, that's exactly what they were doing. And so the guy in charge of all of it was Sidney Gottlieb, who had taken LSD, and his epiphany while tripping was, you could use this to control people. So you have to imagine he's not a great person. Also, you have to imagine he got made fun of a lot because he was literally Forrest Gump. So, except he was actually really, really smart. Drake, I'm eating into your time. I'm so sorry. There's so many.
We can go a little bit past 9. It's okay.
This one's going to be a 2-parter. I'm eating into it too.
I don't know about that, but we could do 2 parts on it.
Well, I mean, like the whole Manson piece is going to be an episode alone. So,
but Dallas is frozen over, so we can go a little bit long, right?
I don't mind going a little bit longer.
We can cut it on YouTube later if it's too long a video or whatever. But I'm going to keep going. Whitey Bulger's involved. But in 54, a Cornell Medical Center doctor with the last name Wolf, I didn't catch his first name, meets Dulles, and Dulles sends him to Gottlieb. And over 4 years, the CIA paid him $140,000 to do experiments on unwitting patients domestically. And it got so big that Gottlieb, as head of MK Ultra, and Wolf opened a non-for-profit charity called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. And they opened that to fund other doctors to run their experiments above board, like within the legal economy. It got so big that they were opening charities to donate to doctors and telling the doctors to commit the crimes that they wanted them to. That's how you get 143 different sub projects under MK Ultra, is that they were playing every system they could. And he was any doctor who said, I will dose people with LSD and see what happens to whatever extent you want to. He was going, yes, do it. Here's money from the CIA.
What year is this?
Covert ops money. Oh, you caught me. 54. 54,
so this is way, way early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so we're getting to Frank Olson. There's a video series called Wormwood on Netflix. I can't promote enough. It's very good. It goes over this entire story. Olson was head of the SOD. I forgot what it was called, but they're the guys who are making all the tools.
Yeah.
Or one of them. They were the first one. He specialized in aerosolizing biochemical weapons. He eventually becomes a head of that organization.
Oh God, he's one of the ones that they like secretly dose with LSD unknowingly, right? And he has this mental breakdown.
They take him to a cabin
kills
in the woods.
himself.
Yeah, jumps out the window. No, tell it better.
That's the extent that I know. I haven't watched the actual Wormwood series. I think Salsa watched it a few weeks back, but it's conspiracy on its own.
Yeah, they dose him in a cabin. Then he has a change of heart after this like kind of epiphanous moment of having LSD without knowing that he was going to get LSD. While the guy who's running all these operations is the guy who dosed you, and you go, if you're willing to dose me after you have an epiphany. So he has a change of heart. He knows the position he's in, so he can't just like turn heel because he knows these people will fucking kill him. So he goes start having conversations that he may not should have. And then they get him and they go, hey, we're going to take you to a crazy hospital because you're saying crazy shit. And he went, fine, I'll go to the crazy hospital and I'll quit talking to people or whatever. And then jumps out a window, probably gets thrown out of the window. And then there's a whole investigation that a Watergate burglar helped to cover up.
Dude, that's still like, I don't think it's still ongoing, but say you saying this was like 50, 60 stuff. They like closed it, said it was suicide. Like they reopened that case like much, much later, a couple decades later. They went back into it. And
yeah, his son had to wait till his wife died. And then his son had him exhumed and they reopened the case and like civilly sued Sidney Gottlieb, who I'm talking about. And it was settled out of court.
Right. Like they settled, which should be a red flag for any case, but they settled like $1 million or some shit to get this hushed.
No, and I'll get this out of the way. Sidney Gottlieb went in front of the church committee, but was allowed to do so with an alias. So no one knew his real name and you weren't allowed to take pictures of him.
I'm sorry. That is, he gets to go in front and gets a testimony in front of the church committee under a pseudonym.
Yeah. I wrote it down somewhere. I can't find it. I'll find it eventually.
In what world is that acceptable? You're in a crucible of truth and you get to go in, hey, my name is John Doe.
Well, and his answer every single time was, I don't really remember, because he had already erased all the files.
Yeah.
He destroyed everything. And then this was one of two Senate hearings. There were two of these committees, and the church committee was the biggest one, and the church committee only figured out that it was real. They still had no idea what they were doing. That didn't come out till later with Freedom of Information Act proceedings and shit like that. So there's the whole Frank Olson story. Then Operation Midnight Climax happens, where they open the same operation they had in New York, where they were just inviting people over and dosing them, except that they were getting prostitutes to get men over there for them. And now they're specifically studying sex and LSD. And so they're paying $50 to $100 to the prostitute. They're paying the prostitute to dose the dude, and then they're just seeing what happens from there. And also, if any of the prostitutes went to jail, all they had to do was invoke the guy's name. His last name was White. Carl White, I think. They would go to jail and go, I need to call Carl White, and they would let him out. Because those prostitutes are working for the CIA.
One of the antidotes worth mentioning, just in reference to what you're saying, is during this them exploring these stuff, they find out very much that the set and setting is very much dependent on what kind of trip you have on LSD. Like the CIA discovers set and setting, which is like a kind of like a, I don't want to say philosophy, but it's like kind of an understanding amongst people in that culture. But like set and setting is so essential to the trip. And the CIA stumbles upon like, hey, if you're in a dangerous, scary environment, then it'll invoke this scary trip. So they start intentionally like creating these scenarios that are driving bad trips, which is just perverted and wrong. I'm sorry.
That's an important thing to kind of point out, because if you're talking about MK Ultra and the CIA experimenting LSD on people, some people would go, cool. But some of these were like, no, you're gonna have the worst trip, and they're doing it on purpose.
It's by design. Like, hey,
Really?
what scenario can we put these people in that are going to cause
Like,
bad trips? Oh, you
yeah.
have to do the X, Y, Z in order to get this result. So then they start fabricating those scenarios to get the results that they want. It's fucked up, man.
I mean, there's 143 sub projects, and they go from as simple as a doctor dosing a patient. 149, okay, a doctor dosing a patient just to see what happens in the doctor's office, to let's see what people do when they're tripping and being tortured
Right.
in any manner of ways. So yeah, that's why MK Ultra is so dark, because you have to kind of take it to those dark places, which they did. But
Intentionally,
if you don't, like,
by design. How do we fuck
and if you
people
don't
up?
intentionally try to understand the depravity involved, then you don't understand the overreach and the just blatant disregard for the human existence. And so there is proof that the CIA went directly to Eisenhower to ask to experiment on terminally ill patients. And in doing so, none of this information is available as to what happened. But it was at Gorman Annex. It was like a hospital where the interned would go to die, essentially. But we know that MK Ultra was involved in the CIA specifically, but we don't know what they were allowed to do.
I think there's a bunch of like probably mockumentaries about this. Ketchup. Appreciate that. Anyways.
Oh yeah, Stanford Prison Studies. So there's a little anecdote in this book. I think I pointed it out right. Poisoner in Chief, where Gottlieb leaves the CIA to become a CIA field agent. He leaves the department of the SOD where you make all the shit. He was in tandem head of MK Ultra and head of the department to make crazy spy weapons.
What a pedigree.
Yeah. So he leaves, he goes, I don't want to be head of make crazy spy weapons anymore. I want to be a CIA field agent, and starts making like scarves with Ebola on it and the wetsuit for Castro. He just starts actively being involved in assassinations and like creating the inventions specifically for the CIA to get it done. There's one called Mumba, and then obviously Castro. He made the coin from Bridge of Spies, and he made like pins with aerosols in them. I think I said that too. When Nixon gets in office, he fires Helms, who was right next to Dulles, but Dulles had already been fired by JFK. And Dulles was hired Gottlieb and was covering for him. Helms was close to Dulles, and as soon as Dulles got fired, Helms started covering for Gottlieb. Then Nixon fires Helms, and he and Gottlieb, when that happens, decide to destroy all the MK Ultra documents because they didn't know if Nixon would keep going. And Nixon gets impeached, and President Ford comes in and railroads the investigation into the CIA. He gave it a very narrow scope and told them, if you go over that scope, it won't be good for anybody, like in a not so threatening way.
I'm jumping ahead, but I think next episode should be Manson dedicated in relation to MK Ultra. But I think the next episode after that should be the Nixon impeachment, because I think there's stuff coming out about that whole trial and how it was very fabricated, and like Nixon might not have been as bad as they portrayed him and stuff like that. I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot for saying this, but
no. I saw an interview recently, and it was like an author who knew him.
Yeah,
and he was like, if you got Nixon drunk, he would tell you that the same people that got him were the same people that got Kennedy, but they didn't need to kill him.
Right. And then lining up to Ford, because Ford was just like another potsy, right? Like it was just another pawn that they could plug in.
Ford is the only non-elected president.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, because the VP got indicted too. Right?
I know we're going on tangents here. I'm sorry, Drake.
No, if we spend, because we can either go over time and make this 2.5 hours, and I can give my spiel on Charles Manson. I have more than Charles Manson, so I do want to be able to give. If I'm not going to talk about Charles Manson tonight, I would like to talk about the other parts I have tonight. And if we want to save Charles Manson, we can, because that is a whole lot. I put a lot into it. So if we want to make this a longer episode, I'm totally down.
I think we
I'm
could
not-
save Manson for next week. Just say it's part 2 going into
Gonna
Manson.
want to do research on that as well.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, I know I've been
Because
talking a lot.
I've already put so much into it.
Yeah. No, if you've got other stuff you want to talk to, I mean, you can
I'm
obviously
on my
talk about
last
Manson.
paragraph, so
Let's go.
You can have
Okay,
the
go
rest of
ahead.
the
Just
time.
let Clayton go, and I'll bust into it.
All right. I should have said that way before we had this long ass conversation. My bad. Ford railroads the investigation and into the CIA and appointed the VP Nelson Rockefeller.
Where have I heard that name before?
Yeah, right. Rockefeller Foundation and shit like that.
Literally, yeah, fucking.
And
Keep going.
Rockefeller served with Alan Dulles in a secret subcommittee called the Operations Coordinating Board, which is tied to the National Security Council. There's a link. There's a Wikipedia link for that too. So I didn't make it up. So it's a lot like the Warren Commission that Dulles would eventually be, or that Dulles was head of. Dulles' best friend was head of the committee that was investigating Dulles and what he did with the CIA through Sidney Gottlieb. And then in the Church Committee hearings, they found Gottlieb in India, but like I said, let him testify under a pseudonym. He eventually got sued civilly, like what we said with James Olson's family. And I think there was another instance, but he eventually, he lived a pretty handsome life afterwards, but people think he had a change of heart and went through a huge depressive state and then killed himself. But their family was super secretive and their kids would never talk about him in public or whatever. And the wife wouldn't say how he died. And he had a very private funeral. So it's like his death is kind of shrouded in mystery.
Damn.
But that's Sidney Gottlieb, and he headed up all that shit. Let me make sure I had said everything I did. Yeah, I said everything. I talked a lot. So
Yeah, you talked a lot. Now,
what
shut
I'm
the
known
fuck up.
for. Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna do a whole episode on Charles Manson, I won't dig too deep into that.
You can mention him in reference to what we've been talking about for sure. I don't want to sell you short, but I think there's a whole episode worthy of Manson material.
There's so much, dude. Like,
Tonight's kind of a special night in that we're all pretty sure we have tomorrow off or a half day or
I
something.
definitely am not doing shit tomorrow, so I can stay up a little bit.
Because Dallas is fucked. So if we let this go long, we can cut it for the re-upload, but we can finish this topic if you all want to also. I mean,
I'm down to finish it tonight.
I feel like we have named this episode MK Ultra, and we're just now getting to MK Ultra, like what it's really was doing.
I just went through the whole thing.
No, I just meant like leading into the Manson murders and stuff like that. But you're right.
Let me take the wheel. So,
Jesus, take the wheel.
All right. So back to Midnight Climax, just to make this short. Like I was saying a minute ago, and like Clayton was saying, like they would have these hotels and anywhere they could get, and the CIA agents would have one room, and then you'd have the other room where this prostitute would bring in Johns and, like you said, people from clubs, all that type of stuff, and they would lace their drink with LSD, and they would the CIA agents, they're listening in the next room, so they have microphones and all that stuff up to the walls, they're hearing everything, and they're evaluating these people either have sex with prostitutes or just how they react to certain questions. Like you were saying, I think it was Clayton talking a minute ago, like you said, getting Nixon to drink and he would say all this stuff. It was like kind of like that. It was like they would.
Yeah, they were testing the bounds of the human spirit and human mind under the influence of LSD, with the goal of influencing their thoughts and to some extent erasing them. They were trying to erase and replace ideas and thoughts and memories in people, and all they ever figured out how to do was scramble someone's brain.
Yep. Well, one thing. So Charles Manson was not technically a serial killer, even though he is labeled in that realm. But he had people killed for him. One other mass murder, domestic terrorist, serial killer that we can put into the mix that this is actually proven. I can show the fucking proof. You can look it up yourself, whatever we need to do. But Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber, genius, fucking IQ. This dude was super smart. He actually hated the Industrial Revolution and technology, and he said technology was like the downfall of us all. Don't quote me on that. It's not exactly the words he said, but
well, he was targeting the communications.
He definitely was saying like, yeah, communication and all that is going to be the downfall of us. So Ted Kaczynski, he was at Harvard. He went to Harvard University. He was tested with LSD his sophomore year. It was 1959, so kind of right when Clayton was talking about most of his stuff. He was recruited for a psychological experiment that, unbeknownst to him, it lasted for 3 years. So basically, almost his entire college career there. The tests were performed by the brilliant and complex Harvard psychologist Henry A. Murray. So this guy, Murray, he's a very famous psychologist, even besides the inhumane testing he did on, I believe it was 22 different individuals through MK Ultra just at Harvard. So
Dude,
after the war,
so we've got Harvard and Cornell. Let's assume they infiltrated all the Ivy League schools.
they did, they did 100%, because the CIA was funding through universities and research centers anyone that could test subjects.
Absolutely, and the reason they went to doctors and hospitals is so they could get unwitting subjects. But even to that extent, after the failures of MK Ultra, LSD proliferated through the proletariat and the wealthy and well-off first. It was a white-collar drug when it came out because it was so hard to get a hold of, and it went through professors to students. And that's kind of the proliferation of the hippie movement is after that. Is once it hits the students, and then the students they disseminated amongst the youth.
Yeah, they tested the hippie movement, politicians, sex workers, basically anybody. It didn't matter who you were, and especially with Ted Kaczynski's ideas and his beliefs and everything, talking about the Industrial Revolution. I'm sure as soon as he was in these classes with this psychologist Murray, he was the perfect test subject, because he's like, one, you're basically a genius. You have a genius IQ, and you have these bizarre ideals on life. And so Murray worked at Harvard before World War II, and then he returned after World War II in 1940s. Yeah, so this says he became a lecturer in 1947 and a professor of clinical psychology in 1951. He worked with colleagues of psychological clinics to apply and improve the thematic appreciation test, otherwise known as TAT, a projective test used to assess an individual's personality and self-understanding. The TAT has been used in numerous studies in personality and motivation. It's still used today as a screening tool for employers. So that's what I'm saying. This dude is super famous for a lot of stuff he did, even though he did test people. No, and you've
brought up an interesting concept, which I found roots in as well, in that ideas and practices that are used today come from MK Ultra a lot. So have you ever watched like the police interrogation videos where people kind of like break down their body movements and things like that?
Yes, yeah, that shit's crazy. I saw it on John Wayne Gacy. And
okay, so those videos,
stuff he did.
Those videos are like a magnifying glass on what MK Ultra was actually looking at. Mm-hmm. So they were looking at how people react to interrogations and the best interrogation tactics. And what's really interesting about that is like one of them is repetition. So like Bart Simpson writing "I will not blah blah blah" at the beginning of every Simpsons episode is like literally that. And then in Guantanamo Bay, when all those people got in trouble for like hosing down naked captors and like playing shit on repeat, that comes from MK Ultra. That's what they were trying to learn, and it does work. It does break down your psyche. There's different levels as to how much you can endure, but some people break under those standards. So
and that was all one of the major points.
all of that comes from the research gained through MK Ultra, which is gained through Nazi science, which is like, dude, this is an insane world we live in.
It really is, man. Once you start like seeing how it actually is and how corrupt every system is, like every system is corrupt. There's corrupt people in so many places, and it's scary to think that like so many children and people are being tortured and destroyed in so many different ways and abused.
Yeah. No, a lot of people came forward through the 70s through the 80s as victims of MK Ultra. And the most unfortunate thing about coming forward as a victim of MK Ultra is you might be crazy. And also crazy people are going to say they were. So
yeah, that's true.
A lot of these victims weren't taken very seriously.
Yeah, you're right, man. And especially if they were like already drug addicts, if they were homeless, stuff like that, man.
Yeah.
Especially or a sex worker, the cops wouldn't care anything they had to say. That's why half the stuff in the Franklin Project, the Franklin cover up, all those testimonies were deemed fraud. And if you go look up that story, dude, those testimonies.
Like I said at the beginning of this, I told my grandma who lived through all of these years, has no idea about MK Ultra. And it's like, it's pretty important that you know what your government has done to people.
Absolutely.
People
it's not even
in our own country.
100% the government, but that generation even, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what our generation is going to be capable of, but like you were living through it while your peers were doing this shit too.
Yeah, it makes it hard to discern. Like this goes back to the social media episode, but it makes it hard to discern how much of how crazy the world seems is related to how exposed you are to it and how much it actually happens, because it currently seems like we're way more exposed and it happens way more often. But in the 40s and 50s, this is probably the amount of information you're going to get from 70 years ago, you know? So like it happened. We don't know to the extent because people didn't communicate efficiently enough. But now you get everything.
Yeah.
And you get too much and you get a bunch of fake stuff. So I don't know. It's an interesting parallel.
For sure. But back to Ted Kaczynski. So this guy Murray, he used so Murray and what was his name? What was his name that you spoke
Jolly
about
West.
earlier? Jolly West. Hold on. I think I'm making this up. Never mind. Forget what I was about to say. All right. So back to Murray. He used 22 different Harvard undergraduates as research subjects. The experiment involved psychological torment and humiliation. The Harvard study aimed at psychotic destruction by humiliating undergraduates and thereby causing them to experience severe stress. The unwitting undergraduates were submitted to what Murray called vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive attacks, specifically tailored, assaulted their egos, cherished their ideas and beliefs that were used to cause high levels of stress and distress. Literally what Charles Manson was doing to his subjects when he would put them in these circles and he would put a chair in the middle of them and he would tell Susan Atkins and Tex and everyone else, he would tell them, pretend there's someone in the middle of this, in this, they'd get around this chair, pretend there's someone in the chair. Now you have to scare them to death. So they would pretend someone's in the chair, they're tripping after hundreds of trips of LSD, and they would scream at this chair, and they would stare at this chair, and they would do all these different things to scare the person who was there, but nobody was there. And literally Charles was able to, I'm supposed to talk about Ted right now, but these experiments are the exact same that was happening to him. You're putting these, like Charles Manson removed the conscience from all these different people, and he was able to lure them through LSD to commit murders, and everything that he was thinking of, even if they weren't his original thoughts, maybe they were the CIA's thoughts, like kill Sharon Tate, kill.
Yeah. And that's the scariest thing about this is like, so the CIA is pretty pointed on what they want to get done. That proliferates into letting a doctor study LSD and get what he wants to get done. which devolves into Charles Manson, a not totally sane person already,
Yeah.
to be like basically gifted the power to manipulate people through LSD, through how the CIA has built how to do that.
I was trying to touch on that earlier in text, but if at some point they realize the potential power of this LSD drug and that it's like mind altering and it's going to preach all this love and empathy and stuff, and the government is doing everything they can to tie it to some evil, nefarious force. Like, that was my perception of what they were doing with Manson, is that, hey, how do we tie this such a powerful, good thing to an evil thing and tarnish it and scare people away from it? Well, let's give it to Manson and like tie it into his motivation of wanting to kill and do all this stuff. So that was a different perspective for me. He
was getting perfectly into the hippie movement, and you have this manipulative, very small, non-tough, but he perceived himself as a prophet, and he would make that persona, and he knew he wasn't a tough guy. He was a fucking fraud at the end of it. Like, he was smart, but he was also dumb at the same time. He was like right in the middle of, he just knew how to manipulate and get these people to just completely forget what fear is. And because like Tex Watson talks about when they did the Tate and Bianca murders, or LaBianca, however you pronounce her last name, that when he was stabbing, he didn't see faces, he just saw shapes. And he's literally said everything was Charles's idea, and everything that Charles would tell them to do, they would practice this, and he would call it creepy crawling. So he would tell them, we're going to break into these houses, and we're going to go kill these families, and we're going to do this and that. And it just goes on and on and on and on. It's so fucking long. It's so much. It's crazy.
I think Manson warrants an episode of his own for
sure. No, it does, because I can't even. If I start right now, I'm gonna be on here till 11 p.m.
Yeah. No, we're good. I'm not saying we have to cut it off right now. I'm just saying, like, there's plenty of content of Manson.
But honestly, a ton of the serial killers. Like I said, Charles Manson was not a serial killer. Apparently, he did shoot one person. It might have been a cop. I can't remember exactly. I need to go look this story up. I'll look it up for next week's episode. But he shot somebody in the stomach and he ditched the scene. So he doesn't know if that person actually died. So he technically might have killed that person. But if that person didn't die, then no, he never killed anyone. But I think somebody had put it in the chat earlier that.
So he didn't pick up anybody's dog tags. It wasn't kill confirmed.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't kill confirmed. He shot and ran, and the dude just got downed, and his teammates revived him. Hit me up on Call of Duty. I'm probably getting on after this. But yeah, so, fucking, there's so many different serial killers that were involved in the military that could have been tested, because all these serial killers were coming out in the not all of them, but a huge number of them were coming out in the 70s and 80s committing their crimes. You have Ted Bundy, you have John Wayne Gacy, you have the Zodiac Killer, you have all these different fucking people. Well, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was in the army. He was going through he was kicked out for psychological shit, and he was drinking too much. He could have very well been tested. That's not proven. You had Ted Kaczynski. He was tested at Harvard. You have Charles Manson. There's a bunch of people.
Yeah, this timeline lines up with like the 70s when even like this is when people started saying I was tested on, even with no proof. This is when like the woohoo started and the whole idea of the conspiracy of MK Ultra. It's because it started coming out in the government that it had happened, so people started coming forward that it had happened to them, and it was impossible to discern. Because like I know a person who has lived and had electroshock therapy performed on them. It is at this point impossible to discern that if someone gets electroshock therapy, if they were related to MK Ultra. Like, that is a MK Ultra idea and treatment and therapy. So you have to imagine that the way that this proliferated was so deep that even doctors who weren't working for the CIA went, hey, to compete in this market, I might have to start shocking motherfuckers.
Yeah, my sister's friend, when he told his parents that he was gay, this was years ago, but when he told his parents that he was gay, they sent him to one of those gay camps, and they would sit him in one of those chairs, and they would shock his brain, and they would try to take the gay out, and it's fucking scary.
Yeah, man, that might just be crazy Christians who read
That is, yeah,
what we read, but
absolutely.
No. Yeah, it's just weird how how that proliferate. Like, that's Nazi science.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
Nazi
kind of what we
science
covered,
right there.
right? That it stemmed from this Nazi
Yeah.
science stuff.
It's so crazy to think that like those remnants still exist in the interrogation techniques that are used today, in the torture techniques that no one talks about. You know how they know those torture techniques work? Because of MK Ultra. Whether
Yeah.
they're giving them drugs or not. That's what
That was the point of MK
idea
Ultra, is how to
behind-
control
yeah.
people's minds, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how to break them, and how to get the information you want out of them, and the most useful information, because you have to discern when people will lie to get out of the punishment.
Mhm.
And
That's what's so crazy.
That's the knob they're tuning, and that's the grossest knob anyone could ever tune.
I think we said it before the show, where LSD and marijuana can be, well, mainly more marijuana can be used for, like, okay, I'm going to smoke and I'm going to get into this project, whether it doesn't matter what it is. You get into a project, you focus, you get it done. Or you can use marijuana the opposite way, where it's like, damn it, man, I was fucking going.
I think we're good.
We can do Manson
Can
next
chat
week.
confirm that we're live right now?
I don't have anything on the.
I asked if they can hear us and no one said anything.
No, I think we are now.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck is
We're live. Cool.
Are we live?
Shit,
Are we live?
That was weird.
That was crazy. I don't know what happened. So I'm going to finish these last few points, and then we're going to hop off here, and we're going to start next week with Charles Manson. Like I was saying, so you can use cannabis, marijuana as a way to focus or not focus, many different things. That's what literally Charles Manson was doing with the LSD, is that he would make these people go on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trips, and he would get them to just completely forget who they were, and they would have these fucking weird sex orgies, and they were all having sex with each other, and they would just make them completely like not have any humiliation at all. And literally anything Charles would say, this happened in 2 fucking years. Like 1967, Charles gets released from prison, and boom, Summer of Love into 1969 to the fucking Tate murders. And it happened that quick. And that's one of the biggest shockers of the Charles Manson story, is that it all happened that quick. And that, I'm going to get into this next time, but that these individuals, I think he had like 20 or so followers, but only just a few were the actual killers. And I wrote all those down, but I'll get into those next week, like I said. But how he got those people with the backgrounds they had to do what they did. I'm going to end it on that. I think we should do plugs and get the fuck out of here, because the CIA is watching us.
Well, this is a short second video to have to
I think we got the bulk of it
stitch
down.
together.
Yeah, I think we got the bulk of it within that one episode. This is
That was a
obviously going
good
to show up
show.
as a second episode.
Man, I
This
think
is
we
the
missed last
post-show,
week, so
apparently.
we should go for half an hour more and see how much through Manson we can get.
Well, I can fucking start going on Manson if you want me to.
I don't think we should end, especially since we just got cut off. Let's make sure we got cut off because of the internet.
No, I got a text saying it's working. Live.
If we're
It's up to
getting
y'all, but if I'm putting a vote out, I say let's go long, because we missed a full week. I think
We did miss a full week.
I think we deserve to go a little long.
I'm definitely cool with going a little bit longer. This is going to show up as a second stream though on Twitch, and it won't be on YouTube. So
Oh.
definitely keep
No,
that in
we-
mind.
We can export them both, right?
Yeah, but then you're going to have to pull them onto some kind of computer and do some kind of post editing, which is
I'll do it.
all right. Clayton's handling YouTube this week.
All right, Clayton's gonna do that.
Or
All
if
right.
we go long enough, you can just do episode 3.1, episode 3.2. It doesn't matter.
Episode 3.01.
Let's keep going. MK Ultra's so interesting.
Right.
He was some
So-
Manson shit.
Charles Manson, when he was born, his mama did not want him. His mama was a prostitute. And at one point she brings him to a bar. She's drinking and she runs out of money. And the bartender is like, oh, that's such a cute baby. And she's like, well, I'll trade you him for a pint of beer. And she's like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Gives her the pint of beer, walks away, starts helping other customers. Charles Manson's mom, I don't know her name off the top of my head. I didn't look that up. Starts fucking throwing the beer back. Dips. Leaves Charles. He's in a little crib. And then fucking the bartender walks back. And then she sees baby Charles. And she's like, oh, my God. So she's like, it's kind of like a miracle, like, because the bartender couldn't have any children, and that's why she wanted the child. She was like, oh, that's such a cute baby, blah, blah, blah. I wish I could have a baby. So now she has the baby. Well, she takes the baby. She doesn't report it. She's like, fuck it. I'm going to keep this baby because now it's mine. The mom obviously didn't want her or want him, and she's at a bar. So after Charles' mom goes back home, her brother, Charles's uncle, finds out. The uncle hunts him down. The uncle gets him, and apparently the uncle had a lot of fucked up shit with him too, so he definitely had some issues, and I don't think that helped with Charles at all.
Uncle Manson.
Uncle Manson.
You know what's really unfortunate? I'm going to interject here with a little private story time. My driver's license, I look like Charles Manson.
Me too.
I'm pretty sure
can you share that on stream?
No. I'm not giving that number away. But I'm pretty sure if I dressed up as Charles Manson for Halloween, everyone would know exactly who I was.
Wasn't there some fucked up shit after, hey, appreciate that Stream Elements, but after the Jeffrey Dahmer shit on Netflix came out, there was a bunch of kids dressing up as him as for Halloween, and it's very, very disrespectful. Sorry.
Yeah, because I was walking around. I think we took our niece, and there were a bunch of kids that looked like fucking Napoleon Dynamite. And I was like, why are there so many straight-haired Napoleons walking around? They were Jeffrey Dahmer.
If you dressed up as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween, I don't want to say fuck you, but what the fuck, for sure.
Yeah, what the fuck is wrong with you? So, Charles Manson, what's insane, he was in jail for half of his life. Literally half. Just Drake waiting patiently. I've been waiting patiently all fucking episode. It's my turn to talk. And y'all shut the fuck up. I'm just playing.
We started a whole episode just for you.
I know. I'm playing. I'm having fun. We're getting into it now. So, like I said, he was in prison for half his life. And for a lot of hard crimes. Like he was stealing cars a lot. He actually he raped a boy. Charles was raped when he was younger in one of the formatory schools he went to. What?
That was such a heavy escalation.
I'm just saying he was in prison. This is what's crazy is the CIA used him because he had all these terrible crimes against him, like rape, theft, robbery, every fucking thing you can think of, except for killing, basically.
They were testing that shit in jail. They might have, this is conspiracy, but they might have found him in jail and then went, hey, to get out of jail, you got to go to Haight-Ashbury every other week. They're going to teach you some crazy shit.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. Charles was definitely, he was narcissistic. The fact that this is what a lot of people, that, like you said, like your grandma and your mom not knowing what MK Ultra was, but it's like, how would Charles Manson supply all these people with 2 years worth of LSD, constant trips with no money? They didn't have great jobs at all. They found the little spot in the desert where they were hiding, and they had all that privacy.
Yeah, like abandoned farm or whatever it was.
Yeah, they knew it was a ranch. It was a ranch. They knew the owner of the ranch, and they had some deal with him, and So Charles, he would get any fucking thing he wanted. Basically, he used one of his followers to go have sex with the landowner of where they were staying, and so that's how they were staying there for a long time, because Charles was supplying him with free sex.
That's in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Sorry, not Mexico. Hollywood. Jesus,
Hollywood. Yeah.
Turns out it's Operation Midnight Climax.
Literally, yeah. You know what I'm saying? what's crazy is like, man, there's so much. Where do I even fucking begin? With what Charles would do with his followers, like I said, they would go on hundreds of trips of LSD. They would have sex orgies. They would do all kinds of weird shit. Like I said, he would test them, trying to make them forget all fear. He technically, have y'all ever heard of a name called Krishna Vinta?
No.
Is that a guru?
No. This is an ex-con who declared himself a messiah. He founded his own church, preaching society was corrupt and doomed. Just wait. So he said a race war was coming and knew of a secret place in the desert where he and his people could wait it out.
That's
when the war was over, they would emerge and create a new civilization. Vinto was he called this Helter Skelter. Manson is a complete fucking fraud because Manson would visit this dude's church in 1968, right in the middle of gaining his followers. So just enough time to be like, okay, we can do this Helter Skelter in this race war. And when the murders come around, they do, like Charles is like, make sure that you make it obvious that this is a race war. So they write pig in the blood at most of the murders in different forms.
Well, and they wrote Helter Skelter, and the cops didn't know what that meant. And what it meant was this esoteric idea of a race war that was going to end humanity and that you could survive like a Mad Max type of apocalyptic story.
Yeah. And Charles believed that African Americans, after the race war between white and black people, that the African Americans would win, and that African Americans wouldn't be smart enough to create the civilization to continue living. So that's when Charles and his followers would come out of the ground and they would take control of the whole world.
Oh, wow.
This is how fucking crazy he was.
I didn't realize there was a racist bent to it.
Oh, yeah, he was very racist. Charles didn't give a shit about African Americans.
That's crazy. You sound like Kanye when he said Bush didn't care about black people.
I fucking love that video. I'll pull that up randomly when I'm standing around people. I'm like, have you seen this? And they're like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, yeah, I bet you voted for it. No,
it's real. It really happened.
It was real. Oh my God, it's so fucking funny. But like I said, it was right in the middle of gaining his followers. And I feel like there were many forms of MK Ultra where the CIA was using LSD to create people that were like perfect weapons. And that's what Charles Manson did. It was an MK Ultra test gone right, where you would make people completely forget who they were. Not completely forget who they were, but just lose all consciousness, subdue to anything you say. Like you are God and you are Satan to these people. They don't know who you are. They just know that you are their prophet. And so with that, I feel like that was just a perfect test trial of MK Ultra for the CIA, was Charles giving the LSD to all these people, because they were testing all these people. They tested people when they would have sex. They would test people just having conversations, with stress levels, with how happy they would be, in all these different forms of what LSD can do to you, to get information out of you, to make someone shoot on command.
And if you imagine that Manson is running this ranch like a sort of commune, then you imagine that he has some type of say over the entire economical situation. If he has a follower paying rent with her body, then you have to assume that any money anybody makes at any menial job, he's running this shit like a fiefdom, and he's the king, and everyone does shit for him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it begs the question, like,
the level of manipulation
where did he learn some of these techniques? Like, if he's being handed this LSD, I'm saying, like, if he was handing this LSD from the CIA, then they were probably like, hey, here's what we discovered. Here's, our methods of success. You could use this to get this group of people on board.
Dog, they were probably like, this is what we did to you, and this is what we want you to do to other people.
Literally. So that's what would happen is, like, Charles would go to the to the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Center. He would get different types of LSD. Some were called Belladonna, Orange Sunshine, STP. In 1967, Manson was 32 years old. He already spent half his life in prison, like I was saying. So following his parole from the year in California's Terminal Island prison, he made his way north to San Francisco in the Bay Area.
San Francisco was the hub for LSD, right?
Yes.
Right.
Or I think it was one of them. He basically took a turn for the truly bizarre intersect. He was in 4 different CIA funded drug research studies. His participation in 2 has been confirmed. So 2, I guess, are up in the air. So his parole officer.
1 is enough.
One's enough.
4 is pretty out there.
So Roger Smith, did you ever stumble upon him, Clayton, in your research?
No, I didn't. Well,
Okay, so
I probably heard his name and went, I don't remember that.
Yeah, Roger Smith. He was a Berkeley doctoral student. He was Manson's parole officer. He was a federally funded agent researching LSD and drug use among San Francisco's population. So he was one of the top dogs over there. So even with Charles like breaking his parole rules and doing all the shit he wasn't supposed to do, and Smith could have sent him right back to prison, he wouldn't, and he would just kept putting him out there and
that trope is through and through design a design factor in a CIA operation, in the sense that in the Operation Midnight Climax, these prostitutes are getting out of jail so that the CIA can keep using them.
They're assets. They got to keep these assets on the street.
Yeah. Like, so they have assets in the sense that they have people on the street who they want to keep on the street. And then they have assets in a sense of these prisoners are in prison and we're going to use them. So like, it's through and through. They're taking advantage of people's.
That's the part that frustrates me the most. And like I mentioned earlier, like with Timothy Leary and stuff, and if he's trying to use this as a therapeutic thing to convert people over from the dark side, not that it's the dark side, I'm just saying, if they're trying to, rehabilitate people and introduce them back into society and stuff like that, and the CIA takes that same game plan and says, no, we're going to go the other way with it. And then.
Yeah.
So what's crazy is, so Louis Jolly West, who we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Clayton,
you've been there, Sprinkles?
He worked at Haight-Ashbury as well with Roger Smith. And he would test LSD through hippies and all that.
Hang on. Sprinkles says she's been to Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. She's calling it a must visit. That's either a very funny, sarcastic joke, or she's been to some type of museum that I'm very interested in.
So hang on. I mean, I think that's worth mentioning, because in my research, I didn't get into Manson and stuff. I was going to leave that to you guys. But Haight-Ashbury, from my perspective, wasn't necessarily nefarious.
No, it was.
See, okay, I might have missed the whole CIA involvement and pieces of stuff like that, but from my understanding, it was like a safe haven for these hippies to come to and experiment.
It was that's the front.
I think I actually did. So there was part of it that was saying that it was like a front for the CIA, right?
Well, yeah, because Jolly West was given a $20,000 lab in that location.
The CIA was literally funding Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah, but I mean, you also get the Grateful Dead, and you get all those the Kinseys.
Well, that's the conversation I've tried to bring up a few times that I don't feel I'm doing justice to bring home, in that the proliferation of LSD as a drug started in very specific spots, whether it's positions of power in like actual power, or being part of the upper class. And at the time, professors are the upper class of society. And so it's professors and very successful businessmen and very high up politicians that are like having their friends try LSD. And then, so now professors really like LSD, and it gets to the point where a professor can have a recreational use LSD in their possession and go, I really like this student and I want to probe their brain. I'm going to take LSD and tell them what it is and give it to them, and they're going to take LSD. And then as soon as one student in a student body has tried LSD I believe colleges in the 60s and 70s were a bit different than they were in the 2010s, in that the it was more of a quest for knowledge at the time. And if it's presented as like, this is going to expand your brain type drug, which by the time it got to professors and students, it was, then it would grow exponentially with, because in the 60s and 70s, you went to college if you had a thing that you already knew you wanted to study.
No,
Because
go ahead, Ben.
because regular jobs could lead you to a classic American dream life in those times.
There was an
College
antidote.
wasn't a requirement.
There was an antidote I was trying to get at earlier, and I gave an analogy, but just before I mentioned that analogy, they discover this drug, and it's a wide awakening for a lot of people, right? And then for whatever reason, and that's what I was getting in with Manson, is that they turned it into this evil thing. But in the get-go, it was supposed to be therapeutic. It was supposed to be mind-changing and like help people out. And then the government turned it into this evil thing.
Right.
And here recently, we're discovering, through psilocybin and stuff like that, it could be used as a treatment for PTSD and stuff like that.
Yeah. Literally pharmaceutically in certain states.
By analogy that
Absolutely.
I read that I was trying to draw to. So imagine like in the 1500s or whenever it was, Galileo discovers the telescope, and he discovers we're not the center of the galaxy. It wasn't Copernicus. Who was it? I can't remember who it was, but it was either Copernicus or there was another name. I can't remember.
I think it was Copernicus.
Whoever it was, like we start discovering our retrospective view of what the universe is and stuff like that. My point is, imagine if Galileo had the telescope and he's witnessing all this stuff, and for whatever reason the government was like, hey, that's illegal. And by government I probably mean the Catholic Church, but that's illegal, you can't have that viewpoint, and then it gets shut off from a research standpoint, and it gets handed off into this occultic culture where it's bad and seen as like you have to do this stuff under the radar illegally.
Yeah.
So it shuts off all fundamental research into what it could have been, right? So from a legal, respectable standpoint, it gets shunned and taken out of that realm and forced into black markets, into like this crazy land of you're doing something wrong, right?
Yeah, and let me offer my perspective in kind of what you're saying is that like imagine if LSD or the knowledge of the effects of psychotropic drugs as far as being studied goes didn't birth out of government secret agencies,
Right.
as far as the research around them, and then wasn't like in the 70s, it literally was made into law that you have to go through the government to study these.
No,
But
I think even at that point,
20
with
years
the
before that, the only people that were granting the money to study it was the government. So from 50 to 70, the government, like secretively and through like weird shell companies, is paying doctors to study the effects of psychotropic drugs. And in the 70s, they go, it's illegal. You got to ask the government. And so now it's just official.
The only point that I would make is that once that Nixon administration takes power and the Controlled Substance Act, even then you can't, as a researcher, get access to this stuff. It wasn't until 2010, I think, that they started leading. People started getting grants and were able to research psilocybin and stuff. But up until that point, you couldn't even get access to this stuff. The government was like, there is no pharmaceutical need for this stuff. It's addictive. It'll ruin people's lives. It's on par with heroin, right? That's another point we're making.
Imagine everyone who's ever told you that LSD was great is wearing pajama pants, because that's reality also. So like, how do you proliferate that with the already skewed view it has? Plus, it's Craig and he doesn't move from that chair. He wears house shoes and pajama pants and a band tee.
The greatest, I mean, it should be a crime against humanity that this stuff gets put on par with heroin and stuff like that. Like even for any association between LSD or anything in that category, and I'm including psilocybin, I'm including mescaline even, I'm including anything within that psychedelic realm, gets on par with fentanyl and heroin and all the shit that will ruin your life. Like that should be an insult to you. You should be very frustrated.
Try getting addicted to a hallucinogenic drug.
It's ridiculous. You don't go around going, "Oh, I'm addicted to shrooms, man. I got to get my fix and get my psilocybin trip in." Like, no, that's not what is happening.
Your body acclimates to shrooms so fast that like your if you take shrooms every weekend, they stop working.
Dude, it's quicker. Like if you take a heavy dose of shrooms, I'm saying like a heroic dose, 5-6 grams or something like that. That's probably pretty extreme. 4, 5, 6. The next week, if you're trying to replicate that, is incredibly diminished.
Yeah, it's like 10.
Dude,
you have to eat 10.
It is substantially less, and that's kind of the point that we're trying to make. It's not a fix that you're trying to get back and
all
chase
those
them high.
hallucinogenic drugs work that way. I think you could do LSD every day, and it will still hit you the same crazy way. But you're going to get used to it just like you do any other, like even THC, shrooms.
That was my argument against cannabis. Not an argument against cannabis, but if you're smoking cannabis regularly, like it becomes very much a part of your reality. So that is you. It's like the sober mentality. Is your reality. Is that you're experiencing reality through cannabis. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is an altered state.
Setting, says Ketchup. Hell yeah.
Setting for sure. It is.
Well,
essential.
it's just interesting that those are the class of drugs that are deemed the most dangerous. It's the ones that we've studied the most
natural,
the most intently on the most unwilling people ever. It's like you tested heroin less long, and it is actually detrimental to anyone's health who takes it.
It's also been in the pharmaceutical realm and being prescribed to people the longest. Like as soon as they discovered what LSD was and the capability of what it could do and release and like free your mind, they were like, shut this shit down. Let's tie it to Manson so that people view it as this evil force. Oh, fentanyl? Let's give that to people so that they feel comfortable after surgery. Like,
yeah,
I get that small piece, but there's no excuse to me. Like,
well, it's because opiates and stuff like that became very quickly known for pain blocking or whatever, and so they had an immediate use. But the way that psychotropic drugs were tested were to control people and deemed ineffective. They didn't test for like the psychological benefits that might be gleaned out of a clean, proper like session with a psychologist while you're on that, or just you alone in a room in a very controlled situation. However they administer these drugs where they're legal.
I think it had the opposite
Washington
effect
and stuff
they wanted. Like if they thought that LSD would be this mind controlling, like, oh, we could dose people with LSD and then get them to do all this crazy shit, then that didn't pan out.
The wrong one, yeah.
Right, exactly. It didn't pan out that way, so they immediately shut it down. Was like, nope. We're gonna cancel that altogether. Like, don't even go down that avenue. Hey, don't try this because you're gonna have psychosis.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, it can cause psychosis. Yeah, I'm not advocating.
That's what I was gonna say. Is that the downside is you can literally fry someone's brain.
Right. I'm not advocating.
You can break a person. There was an anecdote in that book I read, Poisoner in Chief, where they broke a lady's brain to where she thought she was like she functioned as if she was 6 years old. They broke her down to where she was in the fetal position, sucking her thumb, like having to be fed. That was her existence, was just fetal position, like can't deal with reality.
That's terrible. I'd be like, put a bullet in me because I'm done.
Yeah, and so they've done that experiment. Now Charles Manson exists.
Literally. And
you grant him that superhuman ability to do that to people. I'm gonna grab a beer. We've cut Drake off on some Manson shit if you want to hop back on it.
I mean, if we're gonna do another episode on him, I'll save it since we're already at 1 hour and 30 or 2 hours and 30.
We can flip a coin. I'll go for 30
only 30 minutes actually.
If you let me get a beer.
You can run and get a beer. We're not going to cut it off while you're gone.
Yeah.
I'm cool with saving Manson. I think there should be an episode dedicated to Manson. Clayton, go.
Well, then I think that I'm pretty good then if we're going to save the rest of Manson. I don't want to dig too deep into it if we're going to dig more into it next week.
We'll dig into it next week for sure.
We can pontificate on the effects like we were doing on the effects of the control and the effects of the 100%. Actual drug.
I've got a tangent. I'll do my bit. Clayton, go grab your beer.
Yeah, just go get a beer.
I have preached it from the get-go that since I've been experimenting with some of the stuff, I've never done LSD, but I have done psilocybin, that this stuff demands respect. It shouldn't people use it recreationally. I'm not going to say you should or shouldn't do anything, but it should warrant a certain level of respect and authority. It can be very therapeutic. It can be a tool for you to grow and succeed and like change your state of mind, but it can also very easily turn into the other way. And if you're not, it's set and setting, catch up, appreciate that. It is very much your intention of going into it, what you're trying to accomplish. I would say even with cannabis, right? So just from my personal experience, if you're doing cannabis and stuff, people go and smoke and then they sit and stare in front of a TV trying to find what they want to watch on Netflix. Like, that's not doing you any favors. But if you sit down and you try, hey, I want to write a song, I want to watch this movie, I want to set this up, and then you smoke and then you go explore, like, that's a completely different experience. It can be abused. It can force you into certain bad habits. I want full disclosure on what that would be. I'm not advocating for anybody to go try this stuff recreationally or on a whim. It is a powerful tool. It is something that can help you, I think. It's obviously being explored now through PTSD treatments and stuff like that. So there is benefits to it. But on the flip side of the coin, I do firmly believe it amplifies whatever is going on in your head. So that's where the bad trips come from. So if you're in a bad state of consciousness, was a weird sound. If you're in a bad place emotionally, if you're in a bad place in any of that, it could potentially amplify that and send you into that spiral of a bad trip.
Oh, are we talking about bad trips?
No, I just advocating for full disclosure that we're not encouraging anybody to do this shit on a whim. We're not encouraging anybody.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. It's not 100% positive. You can have a very bad time.
I am on board with the idea that there is no such thing as a bad trip. If you have a bad trip, it's probably something that you need to address and deal with. If it's something that you're putting on the back burner, it's gonna bring that shit up and put it in front of your face and force you to deal with it.
You have to be willing to learn something about yourself.
100%.
And a lot of the times you learn shit about yourself that you don't necessarily like. It's just how you react to it.
To me, that's the therapy, though. Like, if you have something that you're not wanting to deal with, something that you're just ignoring, you're choosing to ignore, and then you go into this trip, like, you're going to have a bad trip, 100%.
I think that's why it is like in a psychological pharmaceutical sense. I think that is the value that the states who have legalized things like this are finding, in that it makes people confront it brings forth the real issue in your life, and allows your setting to be one where you know what is going on as far as like if you're being counseled or
which
whatever.
I would advocate that you do need to deal with, right? Like I keep saying it, if you're putting it off, if you're not dealing with this shit and it's just eating at you and that's what's driving your anxiety, if that's what's sending you on these spirals in your sober state, right? And then you come in thinking that this psilocybin or whatever it is going to fix you. Like, no, man. It's probably going to send you down a very dark path. Man.
Yeah, it's going to show you what to fix. No, it's the same ant analogy we had in the previous, before we got cut off.
That's the shrooms or aliens bit.
It's going to take you over, yeah.
No, yeah.
And the weird part about it is that, like, sociologically or like person to person, someone being a bummer around you kind of makes you feel like a bummer. And so it does spread person to person. Smiles are contagious. Moods are contagious.
Yeah. Like, you are who you hang out with.
Yeah.
Well, you are who you hang out with. If you're one of Charles Manson's followers, you definitely are like Charles Manson.
What a
segue. The part that pisses
Did you
me
get
off.
into the secret, what was his name? Tex? He had secret tapes? Have you gotten that far in that book?
No. Okay, so I'm glad you brought up the book because I wanted to show it. So this book, it's called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. It's by Tom O'Neill. So we were actually talking about this. Fucking Joe Rogan had him, the author, Tom O'Neill, on his podcast recently, and great episode. It's about 3 hours, but it's very worth listening to. He kind of breaks down this book. This book is the proof that Helter Skelter is like the Warren Commission, and it's just a bunch of fucking bullshit, and the truth is still out there. And with this book, he has proven that the LAPD destroyed documents on the Tate and LaBianca murders, and so many more things. I'm barely diving into it. Like the podcast did talk about a bunch of shit, and gave it justice, but nothing deep.
I've heard this guy
digging into it.
I've heard this guy talk a little bit, and this book started out as an article at a magazine when magazines were relevant, and took 20 years to come out, and it came out as a book. He's been sued. He's probably not made money off this book yet.
Tom O'Neill?
He was gonna get sued by I can't pronounce his name. Bugliosi, the guy that the prosecutor in the Manson trial that also wrote Helter Skelter. He's the author of that.
He's been sued by publishers because he didn't publish, because he didn't finish writing it. He took 20 years to finish writing it, and owed a court settlement from the proceeds of when he published it. They almost made it into a Netflix series.
Yeah.
But he didn't agree to it. So the guy made Wormwood, which we just talked about with the Olsen case. The guy who got thrown out of the window. It's that little mini series on that guy. Yeah, thrown out of the window.
Yeah, he got Epstein.
So that JRE is a very good episode. He went into it. He found a lot of shit that people hadn't found yet.
Dude, that's what's so crazy. That's what's awesome about this book is that he talks about he was never into all the true crime, like Charles Manson killings. He didn't give a shit. He wasn't ever like a whistleblower or a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. He was just a reporter and a journalist. And like you said, he had a friend that hit him up and he needed a job. He said he'd been just lazy for 4 months. He hadn't worked. And then the freaking job came onto his desk, so he took it and he got to dive into a little bit of the Manson murders, and that's when he started seeing how sketchy and how just
seemingly involved the government was.
Yeah, and how I wish I could pronounce his name. Bugliosi, the guy that wrote Helter Skelter. Can you pull that up, Jeremy, so we can see how to pronounce this dead man's name?
Do you know how to spell it, or is he going to guess how to spell Bugliosi?
Once he just type in Helter Skelter, and it will show the author.
Hey guys, I got it. Don't worry about it.
OOG.
No, it's not B-O, it's B-U.
It was written by Leon McCartney. What?
That's not right.
Is that Paul's brother?
No, it's Paul.
Oh. This is how Jesse McCartney became famous, isn't it?
The prosecutor in the Manson fucking trial. I'm about to find it in this book. I didn't want to have to do that, but I will.
Judge Joe Brown?
Judge Joe Brown? No, it ain't him, dog. No.
Helter Skelter. What's his name?
Helter Skelter. Here it is. It's Vincent Bugliosi. I was right.
There we go.
Spell it.
I got it.
Bugliosi.
That's a real name. I believe you. And I would pronounce him Bugliosi.
Oh, I don't even have
Bugliosi. So Vincent Bugliosi was already he wrote the biggest true crime novel ever, which is Helter Skelter. And he was the prosecutor in the Manson trials. He's a very famous prosecutor and all that. And this guy was threatening Tom O'Neill, the author of Chaos, about how you're saying all these accusations against me, and that stands for everything that I've stood for. And he's just trying to. That was one of the other things why this book didn't come out, because he didn't want to be sued by Bugliosi. So he basically waited until Bugliosi died, and then he was able to publish it after all the legal shit that he was going through. But he even tells Joe Rogan that he's not doing great off book sales. And what's insane is national bestseller. And you're telling me that this dude ain't living
Well, did you buy that
large.
copy after he was on JRE? Because
I listened to the podcast and then I bought the book.
That dude has sold so many copies.
So many. That's what I'm saying. No, but he even tells Joe, dude, help me promote this book. And Joe's that's what we're here for. And he goes, oh yeah, then it's working.
Joe,
it fucking worked because I fucking supported it.
Well, and I remember a very specific point in that podcast. Joe was like, "Well, Netflix, y'all should pick this, or Amazon," because he had sold the idea to Amazon, and he was like, "Amazon, y'all need to make this a miniseries, not a movie." It was like agreeing with him because the
like
story is crazy.
Rogan has done that a lot, especially with Graham Hancock and that crowd, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, they're relevant because of him. There's a lot of relevancy because of Joe Rogan.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how many people has he helped bolster?
I mean, imagine you have a podcast and you garner like 2,000 fans or whatever,
dude. It's
and then and then Joe Rogan finds you.
Oh, okay.
And then your life changes forever.
Literally.
Like, he does have that.
He had more than 2,000 followers. Tom O'Neill was already established before.
No,
not like super
absolutely.
established, but it is a crazy book. I can't wait. Now I get another week to dive more into it in order for more Manson history.
Yeah, because those murders get pretty crazy.
They
as far
do,
as,
man.
Like, everything that happened, and I really want to. I want to delve into Tex. Because
that's fine. Because
he gave like a whole deposition to his lawyer who won't release the transcript or the tape or something like that.
You're right. I remember what you're talking about now. Yes. It's starting to ring a bell.
And he like totally confessed and was like, "This is what we did. This is what Manson did. This is how Manson got where he was." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's out, but
it's with the FBI. No.
We tying the FBI into this now?
I think it's with his lawyer.
The FBI interviewed him and Manson during the behavioral science unit.
No, this is a classic case of the FBI tracking down the CIA.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, the FBI is also involved. It's all a fucking circle because they definitely went and interviewed Tex Watson and Charles Manson for the behavioral science unit.
Yeah. Well, and the one I'm talking about is Tex Watson in his last trial or his last appeal, maybe, was talking to his lawyer, and they recorded a very long tape of an absolute confession, and the lawyer wouldn't release it.
You should try to see if him and Charles were having sex together. A lot of people were saying that he would have sex with Charles during these sex orgies. I don't know if Tex was gay. Because I don't think Tex was gay.
Did this happen live on stream? Because
I'm just asking.
Said, hang on, in my headset on Discord, when you said sex, you broke up. So it's.
Do you have to? I don't think having sex with men makes you gay, does it? Yeah, absolutely.
So Tex Watson. That's what's so fucking crazy. Shut the fuck up. So that's what's so crazy is that. Like, Tex was like this honor student. He was just like all these people. Like Sadie, that Charles called her, Susan Atkins, she was a choir student. And then you got Tex Watson, who is this. He lived in an average home. He was an honor student. He was an athlete. He was a school paper editor. I wrote a bunch of shit down about Tex. He had high school education. Like the killers of Manson's followers had high school educations. They had average homes, like home lives, decent parents, all that shit. And that's what's so fucking crazy is he's able to lure these average people to become brutal fucking killers.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it's all done, Tex, and as soon as they're clear-minded, they're off all the fucking LSD and God only knows what else Charles Manson was giving them. Well, they're like, yeah. I'm clear now. And, I am sorry. And I have found, like, Tex Watson claims to have found Christianity and found God. I don't know if that's all true, but he's like, everything I did was Charles' idea first.
Yeah. And, but one of those, like, they were broken in the courtroom. They were still mind broken. They were like upsetting the proceedings. But
they were escorted out multiple times.
Even after one of the women involved, I don't know which one, we'll delve into this more next week, I'm sure, has like admitted and then recanted and then admitted and then recanted. Like, she's still kind of broken. And her story is unreliable no matter what she says, even today, because she has said so many crazy things.
It's all crazy. It's all fucking crazy.
And then
That's
there's
what
that
I've learned
whole
about all
fucking
this.
story about the dude with the Beach Boys, and Manson got pissed off because he didn't get the record deal. There's so many.
Who's the main Beach Boy? What's his name?
Beach. I don't know.
No, is it
Mr.
Dustin?
Beach.
No, it's not Dustin. No one was named Dustin in the 50s, dog.
You're probably right. But so I think it was,
gotta fix
I
this
think
real quick.
Charles knew the drummer of the Beach Boys. He didn't know like the main fucking dude everybody knows of the Beach Boys.
Yeah, it was either Brian or
Brian. Yeah, that's right.
Frederick?
It was
Oh God.
Frederick. Is this the
Bri-
fucking Revolutionary War?
Brian Beach.
Brian-
Frederick, will you write
Brothers
us another
Brian Dennis
song
and
about
Carl
the
Wilson.
fucking beach?
Their cousin Mike, Alfred. So it's either Brian or Dennis.
So,
No, it's Brian.
all right.
What's
all right,
his
so
name?
I don't
Brian
think
what?
he knew Brian. Brian Beach Boy.
Brian Douglas Wilson.
It's
Brian
Beach
Wilson.
Boy.
Yeah,
Brian
it's-
Beach Boy.
He's been called
But
a
I-
genius.
Charles, I don't think met him. He met the drummer or somebody else, and when they stole a song from Charles and
Beach
they
Boys stole
rewrote
a lot
it.
of songs.
Did they really?
Yeah, they stole a song from Charles and they just rewrote the lyrics and kept the melody. And because Charles Manson wrote like decent music, it wasn't amazing, but it was
I've heard-
okay for his time.
I've heard.
I've heard a little bit. Yeah, I've heard a little bit. I've heard like one or two songs, and I was like, okay, I'm not in love, but this is crazy.
The only good Beach Boys song is "Don't Worry, Baby."
What's the
Are you gonna stand by that?
Yeah, give me another one. I mean, there's some classics, but they're not necessarily good songs.
Billie Jean is not my lover. Isn't that Beach Boys?
It's yeah, you're right.
It's not Michael Jackson.
Oh,
I might be wrong on that.
No, I think
No,
it's
it's
Jackal
definitely-
Maxon.
it's definitely Jackal Maxon.
This is my favorite.
I think we're getting off tandem now. Are we just like
Band
getting
name.
drunk together now?
Band name called it Jackal Maxon.
You guys can't
like
hear
that
this.
one.
That's fine.
Why don't you play and watch together?
It's so much effort.
What are you playing?
He's playing a Kamikoto Knives commercial.
What the fuck? And we've been talking this whole time.
Tropical drinks melting in
It
your
doesn't
I
matter.
can't hear it.
It
This
doesn't matter.
is not
It doesn't
entertaining.
matter. Anyways,
No, he's just skipping over and over, so no one knows what's going on.
Look, we're like 3 hours in now, and I'm feeling the alcohol. What are we talking about?
doesn't matter.
MK Ultra, my dog.
Oh, we're
There
still
was-
on that.
Yeah, there was a point I had that I forgot to say.
I want to save the Charles Manson
hang
shit
on
for next week.
Hang on. Let me propose a theory that I can't prove at all, and which I can actually kind of
That's why we're
actively
here.
disprove, but it's so unbelievable I have to explain what's going on. Okay. So I was talking about Sidney Gottlieb a lot, right?
Yep, mentioned him a few times.
Yes.
Okay. And so there was this guy named Scott Gottlieb who, within the past 10 years, I don't remember the dates, ran the FDA and currently sits on Pfizer's board. Now, I Googled Sidney Gottlieb's kids' names and I got 4 names, but it's kind of vague and it's in like a public obituary in a newspaper. The entire family will not talk about him and won't even say how he died. So maybe that's his kids' names. And then I looked up Scott Gottlieb, the guy who ran the FDA and is now head of Pfizer, his family's names, and his dad's name is Stanley, not Sidney. And so I tried to Google his dad, and I don't know who he is. So none of these people connect, but also it's very hard to find any information about them. So they connect. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny that theory.
Yep. And it is a far-fetched theory with no actual proof. So let's all take that, throw that salt over your shoulder. Good luck for you. Set it on the table.
Salt in the soil.
We can
Anyways.
speculate all night.
That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, we can.
It's
there's
just
nothing
weird,
wrong with
and then-
speculating, as
well,
long as you
then-
announce that you're speculating.
Then I Googled what Gottlieb, the name, meant, and I think it means like gift from
A
God.
whale's vagina.
Yeah, right. No, I think it means gift from God in a language.
Man, we're going off the deep end now.
I'll Google it.
You have psilocybin on you?
No, sir.
Oh,
Gottlieb is
I don't even know what
German
that shit
for
looks like.
beloved by God. Okay, yeah, it's German for beloved by God. I thought that was weird because that guy fucked a bunch of people up.
Depends on what god you're looking at, I guess.
I did that shit with the blood
Oh,
when the Holy Grail also meant like some type of blood. I don't know.
How do you spell this guy's name? Gottlieb?
I like to break down words like that. Gottlieb, Gottlieb. It'll autocorrect you.
Yep, got it. Mm-hmm.
I retweeted a video on Twitter, and it was this guy walking through this pro-life march, and this guy has like a pro-life sign, and he's like, so God's against abortions? And he's like, yeah, God's against abortions. And he's like, what about when God killed the whole earth except for Noah and a couple animals on the ark? And the guy just like looked at him, and he just like keeps walking with his sign. And the guy's like, come on, like, what about when God killed the whole earth except Noah? And the guy like won't talk. It was so fucking funny. Go look on my Twitter. Inked Beats, follow me.
We are 8 minutes out from 10, which I think should be a good cutoff.
I felt like you were bringing up a link of some kind.
No, I was just Googling this guy's name. I was trying to fact check you, but you're right. It mentions a spouse. Can I Google her name?
No, I had to find an obituary from the time to get his kids' names.
Why doesn't she have the same name? Yeah, you're probably onto something there. I'd definitely follow that vein. Vein?
But
Are
also
vein and
Scott
vine
Lee.
not the same word?
What? Vein and vine? No.
But they do the same thing.
I appreciate the similarity, if that's what you're asking.
I don't think it's similarity. I think they're the same thing, are they not?
Vines and veins? Veins are circulatory system, and vine is a type of plant.
Anyways.
Was that not your question?
Veins and vines serve the same function.
I agree. But also they're different.
But they're spelled so closely.
Yes, they are spelled closely. Drake, plug.
All right. So, like I said a second ago, you can follow me on Twitter. I've been pretty active on that lately. It's fucking hilarious. So follow me, Inked Beats. It's all one word. INKDBEATS. Instagram, there is a underscore in the middle of it. You can follow me on Twitch. I moved into a new place, so I'm gonna be able to hopefully start streaming again. I had to take a small hiatus break from it, but I want to get my Twitch active again. Follow my band, Able Delilah.
It's playing
we have
in the
a show
background.
coming up. Oh hell yeah! We have a show coming up in February.
We have a copyright strike.
I will sue us. Check out our songs. We have stuff on all the major platforms. Come check out a show. You'll really dig us. You can.
When's your next show? It's super recent, right?
It's in February. You need to go follow us and look at the page for the details.
Someone doesn't have their plugs in order.
You don't know when your next show is?
I want you to go look it up, and that way you will follow us at the
You'll
same
remember
time.
it better for sure.
All right.
Yeah, you'll remember it if you go look at it. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening to us for 3 hours.
I'll go next. My main plugs is this show every Tuesday, 7 o'clock. We did miss last week, but we're pretty consistent. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. till about 9. We went extra early, extra late tonight because of inclement weather. We had free time. A subject that we're very dear to. I say that from the psychedelic standpoint, not the Manson standpoint. But every Tuesday, 7 o'clock, we have merch.
Three from the Manson standpoint.
We have merch right here. It's very overpriced, but it kind of is what it is depending on this website that is building it and creating it for us. So that is like 95% their cut, and like we get maybe $1 or $2 out of it, but just full transparency.
No, full transparency, we get $5 from every person.
Okay, so they're making a bulk of the money still, but we do get a cut, obviously. But yeah, that's Funny Nut Theorios. Appreciate you guys for watching it. The guys that are here every week, obviously. Me personally, I do BOC Molasses on Twitch. I do music. I get to say that now officially. Occasionally,
You do music.
do
You
music.
shit out music.
Shit out music. I play video games with my friends, my brothers. Do check it out. Just to hang out, the very bare minimum. We have a Discord that we would very much like your participation in. It's right there in chat, but definitely plug into that Discord and drop any subjects, any relative conspiracy theories, or any subjects, again, that you would like to talk about.
We're starting a cult, and you should join it. Go to that Discord.
That's fair.
We will drug you with LSD. Not really.
You can find me on all social medias at BOC Wasabi. I don't post on anything except for Twitter. I want to do Twitch more, but I can't promise it. I do a show every Sunday at 8. We missed last Sunday, so I'll apologize for that. It's the Rolling Third at YouTube. Again, that's the Rolling Third at YouTube. And then this show, obviously.
I forgot one. My YouTube page, Inked Beats. Please go subscribe to that. Sorry, I forgot that one.
This show gets immediately uploaded. We're going to have a little technical difficulty this week, but anticipate it Thursday, maybe at the latest. This will get uploaded and reformatted into one consistent, coherent video on YouTube. So YouTube/Funny Nut Theorios.
That's not what's going to happen. It's going to cut off from the last one, and then we're going to re-upload this one, and it's going to be bonus ending.
This is the commentary on the episode before.
Because we went over.
Right. All right, what else? Yeah.
It all
we're
works
good.
out.
Time.
We're good. We are good. Everybody that has hung out and stayed, we appreciate you wholeheartedly. If you're watching this on YouTube at any point and you haven't made it to Twitch and followed us, that would do us a lot of favors. Please do hit that like, subscribe, turn the little bell on, whatever it is, on whatever format you're watching. Rumble is a thing. Rumble's a thing,
Also,
apparently.
we're hitting it real big on Rumble, and if you want to really ride the wave, follow us there. That's not true.
I think that covers all the bases.
Yep.
All right. See y'all next week.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.